This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning and welcome to a very breezy sunrise safari. Look at that incredible view. And this is Safari Live.
Standing by.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Good morning, good morning. Turn your volume up. Oh, I thought this beautiful male was going to start roaring as well. Well, that's a great way to start today, and I suppose I don't really need to say good morning anymore. That roar says it all for itself. Now, we're sitting right in front of the dam at the moment where the gremlins are plotting their revenge against the dam cam. Unfortunately, you can see Henry the hippo is around, and of course, well, David and I are here too. And it would be lovely if these lions came over and had a little drink and came out of the thicket that they perhaps are hiding in. Isn't that lovely? Well, I suppose I should introduce myself at some point as well. Hey, what do you think about that, David? Yes, well, just in case you're first time watching and you're very unsure as to what's going on about here. Well, my name is Taylor, and on camera with me, you heard, David is around. And of course, we're surrounded by Henry the hippo and Amber Eyes, one of the male Birminghams. Well, and it sounds like the rest of them are down in the drainage, which we'll be following up on in a little while. We're just having a quick look around here. Maybe the rest of the pride that seems to be down in the drainage will come out and emerge. And it seems to be quite exciting that, they seem to be excited as well this morning, a little roar. And I was really hoping that this male Birmingham that we're looking at over here was going to join in and call with him. But apparently not. And just before we started, this Birmingham got up to try and mate with Amber Eyes. Well, unfortunately, he got a paw in the face. And that was the end of that. She wasn't having any of it. It just seems as though she doesn't mind the company too much. Since I've been here, I've definitely seen a change in Amber Eyes when it comes to the Birminghams. She would never sit near any of them. And I've only been here for about 2 months now. And now, well, it seems as though she doesn't mind their company too much, well, as long as they just keep their distance. Right, I think we're going to go around and have a closer look. Henry, are you happy that the lions have now moved away? I think Henry was a bit concerned at one point because I suspect that he had all the lions around him last night, and that's probably why he's still in the water, because we know Henry doesn't actually spend too much time in the pools and the pans. You see him as we glide past. We'll come back to Henry though. He likes to go out and graze during the day and sleep in that drainage line where all the Tamboti thickets are. Oh, but it seems as though Amber Eyes and one of the Birminghams, I didn't even have a look properly just yet to actually see who he is, but in a moment we'll see him and get a closer look. But thankfully they're going to take us straight down to where the rest of the pride is, which is nice. So no real need for tracking this morning, though David and I did have a beautiful sight when we came around and just turned off quarantine. We saw all of their footprints and it was quite special. So perhaps once we're done here, we'll go back and have a look and I can show you what quite a few lion tracks look like all together in the sand. It was really nice. Now, let's see what Amber Eyes is going to do. It looks like she's trying to get away from him, and he keeps blocking her. Look there, so now she's trying to do the long way around. And of course, the Birmingham is hot on her heels. No surprise there. And off they go around the corner. Well, let's not get too behind them in case they decide to go through some very thick vegetation. Oh, I need to turn that down now. James is he's around. Don't worry, it's not just me today, but James is out. He is trying to fix a tire, which is always a fun way to start your morning. We'll try and get oh, hang on, that was actually not a bad view. We'll just reverse a little bit. There they are. Right, I'm going to plop herself down. Bit of growling. Not quite ready to go down into the drainage just yet. So this looks like Tinyo. Of course, Mfumo is very easy to tell the difference between the two because on his right side of his face he's got a gaping hole, which is healing, but it's going to take some time. And of course, Tinyo's got the scar on the left-hand side of his lip. Well, and he seems to be the other Birmingham that hangs around the Nkuhumas quite a bit. Hello, boy. Now, it's quite interesting. I thought that Amber Eyes looked a little bit on the round side this morning. So it'll be interesting to see when she starts walking again. I don't know if it's a food baby or perhaps some other kind of babies maybe inside. I don't want to speculate just yet. Their gestation period is so short that often you don't really know until the last couple of weeks. It's only 3.5 months long and can be quite difficult to tell. Hopefully we'll start to see if she is. One of the first signs is obviously a bulging belly, and then of course we're going to start to see those mammary glands swell slightly. And then of course after that, what we'll start to see, she'll start to disappear. See there, she's got a bit of a belly. Now, I don't know if that's just all the buffaloes that they've been feeding on over the last few weeks. Sorry, I'm just going forward because we're behind a tree and I think we could be missing some action. No, they're just walking away. Oh, he wasn't walking very delicately. I don't know if you could hear all those branches breaking. Come on, lions. Even the elephants walk quieter than that. Now you know what's going to happen next, because we are going to have to start following them, of course. I'm going to try and find a nice pathway. Oh no, they seem to have just laid down for a second. Amber Eyes is down again. And of course, Tinyo standing guard. I would like to find the rest of the pride. Let's see if we can't go down into where they are. I think Aubrey's going to go and try and find the rest of the pride. And let's see if we can keep up with him here. Now, this is obviously quite thick. But they didn't sound too far away. I think they're just down in the next gap in the drainage. But we'll stick with these two for a moment longer until Aubrey has a go and tries to relocate the others. Hello, good morning. Oh, I wonder if I haven't identified this Birmingham wrong. I haven't seen him for a couple of days. I think it's been about 4 days now since I've been with the lions lot. Let's see if his face... Maybe it is. Has his face healed that much? At one point it didn't even look like he even had a wound on his face, and I thought that was going to take months to heal. Perhaps it is. Let's just have another proper look. Can you look towards us, please, Mr. Lion? He's going to flop down now. Actually, let's go forward a little bit. Just want to get a bit. Maybe I could have been completely mistaken. I got a bit excited and maybe jumped to conclusions. No ways. This is honestly incredible. I apologize. I don't know why I thought this was Tinyo for a moment. But if you look at his wound, I can't believe that. Look at that, how that hole is closing up. It's not bright red anymore. It's finally starting to scab. That is absolutely incredible how quickly this wound has healed. Now that the scabbing has formed, it'll probably just be a couple of days or so, maybe a week at max, before it is completely sort of scabbed up and that skin is going to start closing together. That is bizarre, because the last time I saw him, he had a big gaping wound, and that was only a couple of days ago. I seriously thought that this wound was going to take months and months to heal, but apparently not, and that's fantastic for this male lion. My apologies for misidentifying him, but I'm so used to seeing that big gaping hole and all the red flesh. You can see still a couple of flies in over there, but I don't think that they're doing him too much sort of harm. I don't think they'll be laying eggs again. You can see that darkening there on the scab. You see, that's beautiful. In terms of what an injury could look like, that is healing so well. I mean, you remember how massive that hole was. It almost looked like you could stick your hand inside it, and it looked as though it needed a stitch or two. But it was just slowly filled out. And now it's just that last top layer that needs to heal. Fantastic. Well done. We were all a bit concerned about him at one point. But isn't that fantastic news? I'm excited. This has made my week, that it has healed so well in just a couple of days. I can hear the other lions in the far distance. They're making all sorts of strange noises. Now, chatting about my speculations about amber eyes, and I know Brent had also sort of a similar feeling. And I know Michael was wondering this morning, I think that amber eyes is a problem with getting pregnant? I'm not sure. I don't know this lioness very well, but I'm just looking at her body, and she's starting to look a little bit more on the plump side, and not sort of the look that they get when they've been devouring lots of buffalo. She just looks different type of a fat, I suppose, to me, than what she normally does. And like I said, we'll only be able to tell in the last coming weeks when we start to see her mammary gland swelling, and then also her behavior will start to change. Now, whether she is infertile or not, I'm not sure. That would need to have blood tests and all those fertility tests done. That's something we can't just speculate about. But I'm unsure, because she has been mating quite a few times. It's like people in life. Sometimes people only come into estrus much later than others, and I suppose there's always that possibility for lions too. I suppose we can't really rule something like that out. And maybe that she was just an exception to the rule, and only later in her life has she really started coming to estrus. I don't know how possible that is, but it would be weird, and it would be incredible if she does indeed become pregnant and she gives birth. I mean, that would be an amazing story. And we can only keep our fingers crossed and sort of see and wait and see what happens. Now, Teresa, you're wondering if she was pregnant, would he still try and mate? I've seen it before where, so we had this is down in the south again, we had a coalition of males called the four-ways males, who were beautiful. Also, had eyes almost like amber eyes, sort of orange and beautiful dark black manes. And they mated with two of the females, and they took to those two males, and then the Charleston males came in and did a pride takeover and chased the four-ways out. And it was a very clever move from the Southern Pride. And what they did is those two females that sort of were almost ready to give birth, they were probably about 3 weeks away when those Charlestons came in. I think they came into false estrus, and they started mating with the Charlestons, thinking that then when they had cubs, that the Charlestons would think that it was their cubs. That, you see, this was the first time the Charleston males had ever mated with females. It was their first pride takeover. So they were very young and naive, and the lionesses were very clever, because it wasn't about maybe 5 weeks later that indeed both lionesses gave birth. One set of cubs unfortunately didn't survive, but one of the older females, her two cubs did survive, and they're now almost a year old now. So I thought that was amazing how they were able to do that, and the Charlestons still don't know any different. So 2 of the cubs in the Southern Pride are indeed not the Charleston's offspring, but indeed the four-ways male's offspring. So something like that could happen. I witnessed it. Maybe she's just pretending. I think these animals are a lot more intelligent than we sort of make them out to be. Isn't this lovely? Now, if you're wondering and you've just perhaps started watching and you're wanting to know how you can get your questions answered, if you have any, you're welcome to either hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you can even just send us an email, questions@wildearth.tv, and myself and James will happily try and answer any of the questions that you have this morning. But I'm strange how Amber Eyes is sort of separated just a little bit from the rest of the pride. Perhaps this male is sort of coaxing her away. Now, chatting about Mfumo's wound on his face, which has healed so nicely over the couple of days. I know that William was wondering if there will be any hair that will start to grow over that wound once it's healed. That is indeed correct, William. Once the scabbing has completely healed and sort of fallen off, I suppose, and the tissue has grown back together, then over time, like you see with the rest of the scars, they'll eventually heal and the hair will start to grow over it. That might take a little bit longer, but I'm absolutely blown away at the rate over the last couple of days of how this wound is healed. It just shows you just how tough these animals really are. But he seems to be having a nap right now. Hello, Tony, old boy fish. Now, I know you're wondering. Oh, I'll open your question now. I'll answer. You can see I've been reading a lot of emails recently that I'm going to open the questions. That's, of course, not the case. We'll try and keep up with them. Now, Tony, you're wondering if there was sort of, if anything came of how he got that cut. So I actually saw it happen. He got a swipe from one of the females. I can't remember which female it was. And they were fighting over a carcass, and he ended up with a tiny little nick on the side of his face. And what we think happened then is that either a bot fly or a screw worm, one of these sort of flies that lay their eggs on animals. Now you get different types of things that happen. We think anyway it was a type of myiasis, and one of the flies actually laid its eggs inside the skin and then caused a big abscess and a swelling, and it then burst. And once it burst, that was obviously when the eggs had hatched. And those larvae don't just feed on dead skin, but they feed on living tissue. And then of course that caused a big irritation. The hole got bigger and bigger in his face, but they eventually pupated and they left. And we think there was a second set of eggs that then burst, because a couple of days later we saw maggots again, and then we haven't seen anything since, and it's just been healing. But let's try and keep up with these two and see where they are going. I think we're going to go around the corner. I just want to ask Aubrey if there's some space that side. Aubrey Taylor. No. Just try and get hold of. I can hear the guards a little bit further up from where we are. So I suspect they're just around the corner. Oh no, I can hear Texans here now. Right, go around here. Sorry, just please bear with me for just a moment. I just want to find out where the rest of the pride is. Texan Taylor. Tex, is it possible to come into that sighting with the rest of the pride? I've lost visual of the other two. Copy, thank you. Okay. So Amber Eyes and the other boy, they're just lying off into the thicket, but I think up ahead is where the rest of the pride is. So we'll just come along here and see if we can get a view. Like I said, I could hear them when we were sitting just behind us. Now, they were making some interesting noises, so I wonder what's going on. Hang on, here they are. So it seems as though they're moving slightly. We're just going to limit, it's a bit difficult. Let's try to take a long look from a long way away. Can you see them through there, David? But it seems as though they're moving. I saw one of the other Birminghams, which I presume is now Tinyo, and one female sort of getting up. Now, it's quite overcast today and there's a lovely breeze. It's not particularly warm anymore. I wish the flies would realize this and go back home. We could get a few little drippy drops maybe. But this would be very good weather to hunt in. There's a bit of wind, it's nice and cool. The lions won't be using too much energy. No, I'm not sure if we're going to get in there. I think space seems to be quite limited in this area that they're laying. We can just be thankful that they're not down into that drainage, because that's a difficult one to get into. Oh my goodness, the flies are everywhere. You can probably hear them buzzing around me. So if you see everything shake a little bit, it's me waving my hands around like crazy, trying to cover my nostrils and my eyes and my mouth. I can see a little bit of movement everywhere else. I don't want to crowd these lions. You all know how I feel about that. So I'm going to give them space, even though it means for us not having the greatest view at the moment. I think we'll just put too much pressure if we try and squeeze a third vehicle in there. Perhaps we can go back. Let's maybe reverse and go back to Amber Eyes and Mfumo. And then we'll take it when there's a spot open here. Then we can come in and join them as well. But hopefully they won't go too far. Right, just reverse a little bit here. Oh, there they are, that's okay. I think we may actually have to go in. There's a little spot for us over here though to go in. They're hiding perfectly behind a tree. So we'll have to just go off-road just a little bit and have a closer inspection. And there they are. So they're not far from the pride now. They're probably only about 50 meters from each other. You can see something's caught Amber Eyes' attention. She keeps looking around and listening very carefully. You can see she keeps sort of reprimanding Mfumo. Maybe we'll actually try and follow them through here. It seems to be quite open. Well, we know where they're going. They're going back to the pride, so maybe we can follow them in from this way. Maybe we'll have a little bit more room, but we shall see. I may change my mind as we get further and further into this thicket. Right. I think what we'll do is we're going to hang tight here for a little bit now, but I believe that James has finally finished changing his tire and is ready to say good morning to you.
Good morning, hello, and welcome everybody to this end of the rather late sunrise safari. I must apologise for Brian and my tardiness. I'm going to have to accept responsibility. We moved on to Jigger from Wendy last night, and unfortunately the tyre was flat, as was the spare tyre. Brian on camera today. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Jimmy.
The subdued Sunday thumb. Very nice. My name is James Henry, for those of you who are wondering who this thing waffling at you is, and please do talk to us, much as you've been talking to Taylor, hashtag Safari Live questions at wildearth.tv. Now, we're just having a look at some nyalas, and some impalas, and they are wandering across quarantine clearings, and behind them a little fork-tailed drongo, and behind him a merciful, thick grey cloud. It was a very sticky night, everybody. I don't know how well any of us slept, and And so we're very pleased for the cloud cover that we have today, and apparently it will go to roughly 26 degrees Celsius, which is around about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 78 or so. So that's okay. And there's some starlings with them, some red-billed buffalo weavers. You can see some hornbills knocking about. I think there may have even been a wattled starling. Yes, wattled starling between the two females. All of them enjoying this early summer flush. The starlings and, well, both species of starling, of course, excited by the invertebrates, the insects and things being uncovered by the hooves of the world's most, well, probably second most beautiful antelope. The drongo ever aware for something that flies up in order to avoid the starlings and the hoofs, and it'll grab it out of the air, and that's called hawking. Very peaceful little scene. As the wind starts to come up a bit, it hasn't been windy so far this morning, certainly wasn't while Brian and I were slaving away changing the tyre in the early morning heat, but now it seems that the wind is coming up, which is very nice. I think my plan today, once we've appreciated these nyala for all they're worth, is to head down towards the south, see if we can't pick up some tracks of the queen, Kurula, our 12-year-old female leopardess. I haven't seen her for a while. She hasn't been seen here for a little while, and so maybe she's brought her two little babies back on to Juma, which is of course the reserve that we find ourselves on now. Hello, Mia from Illinois. You were wondering about the injured Nkanyeni. And if we've seen her again. We haven't seen her again, Mia. We did go and look for her yesterday at Cheetah Plains. Didn't find hide nor hair. I don't think anybody there found her either. So I'm not sure. Interestingly, I did see video footage of that cut. She didn't seem to be limping too badly on it, which tells me it's probably, although it looked pretty gruesome and it was bleeding horribly, it's probably a flesh wound, which means I suspect it will clean itself and it will probably be okay. But that can be a dangerous wound, of course, for any leopard, because we do know that they hunt alone and they're not the biggest of the predators, which means they don't, or they're unable to scavenge in the same way that many of the other animals like hyenas and lions are. And so, yes, an injury like that can really be a real problem for a leopard. But she didn't seem to be limping, which means I don't think that there's a huge muscular or joint problem there. Now, those nyalas may seem to you to be grazing. They are not grazing. They're not eating grass. They're eating forbs, or sort of herbaceous plants that are not grass. And they've just got a slightly different carbon makeup, processes by which they make their carbohydrates, make the nutrients in their leaves slightly different. And that means that animals with slightly different digestive systems are able to eat different things. Monocotyledons, for those of you who are of a biological bent, versus dicotyledons. The monocots being the grasses. This is really fascinating Sunday stuff. And the dicots being the sort of flowering plants, the forbs. And if that didn't put you to sleep, nothing will. Alright, let's carry on around the corner and see if we can't find a leopard. That will be nice, wouldn't it, Brian? Yes. Dustin or Justin, I can't hear exactly what. You're interested in how many vehicles there might be. It's Dustin with a D as in Hoffman. I don't think it's you, Dustin Hoffman. You want to know how many vehicles there are knocking about Juma at any one time. It depends how many guests there are in the camps. At the moment, the two camps, Taylor and Gallagher, are full. So there's one vehicle out of each of those camps, and then there are two from WildEarth, and so that's 4 vehicles. And then there can at any one time be 2 vehicles from another reserve, which could be Buffelshoek, Cheetah Plains, or Torchwood, and they're only allowed to have 2 of those in total on Vuyatela, which is just on Djuma. So at any one time, supposedly no more than 6 vehicles out here, unless the landowners are here, in which case there might be 7. And that's basically how it goes for most of these little reserves in the northern Sabi sand. We'll have one more look at the Nyalas from this angle, with their impala companions. While we look at our antelope here, and the horns of the very impressive spiraled horns, what will be very impressive spiraled horns of that young male. Bud, you're in North Carolina, and you're interested in whether or not there are any animals out here that have antlers as opposed to horns. But no, the deer have antlers, and it designates them as a separate family from the antelope. And so they're actually, oh dear, that's a lovely thing to see. But we don't get deer in Africa. There are no indigenous deer to Africa. Just the antelope. And then the other class of these even-hooved, what we call even-hooved ungulates, or the other family, are the pronghorn antelope, which are neither antelope nor deer. But there are no African deer. And therefore no antlers. Yes, well, it's very nice to watch a Nyala cow have her morning toilet. It does seem to happen unusually often to me. The lovely colour of the green and the soon-to-be fully adult male Nyala, and the chestnut red of the female behind. I think it's a really nice picture, Brian, for a lazy Sunday morning. They, of course, don't know it's Sunday. You know that, Brian? Right, I think we're going to press on and see if we can't find some form of kitty cat. Hello, Hip. I said a little bit earlier that I thought the Nyala was the second most beautiful antelope. Until very recently, I thought it was the best, and then I saw a photograph of something called a mountain Nyala, which comes from the Horn of Africa, and I've always thought, well, based on one photograph, I thought, yes, that's probably the most beautiful one. But I've never seen one in the flesh. Thank you, Hip, for picking up on that. Alrighty, let's head back to the lions, find out what they're doing. We're going to head into the breeze today and see if we can't see if that Karula is around.
Now, this lovely couple haven't moved too far since we last saw them, and I'm sticking on their heels, and I think that we'll just wait with them, and eventually they will move straight towards the pride, and well, then we'll get to see all the other ones. It's just a bit, like I said, it's a bit crowded in there at the moment, but it's quite nice. We'll watch these two as they give themselves or pay themselves a little bit of attention and groom themselves. It's not often that we get to see the males cleaning themselves up, especially when they're following the lionesses around all the time. They sort of forget to groom themselves, and their coats tend to become quite tattered. And you can definitely notice it when the build-up of ticks is quite prominent around their back legs. That's when you know that they haven't been focusing on grooming themselves too well. But ticks are healthy. It's important for them to have these various parasites of them. Obviously not an overpopulation, but a small amount is normal. Now, speaking of the ticks and the various parasites, I know that Daniel from Mexico was wondering exactly that. Do the animals with the hair indeed get sort of troubled by fleas and ticks and various other parasites? They do indeed. You can see, though, this lioness has groomed herself quite nicely, and she doesn't seem to have any obvious ticks on her, but they like their rump legs. Oh my goodness, I'm having all sorts of words coming out at once. They do indeed like to gather around their back legs, and of course in their ears where it's nice and warm, very much the same spots as to where you would see. Oh, sorry, I'm just very quickly listening to the radio. And around their ears, around their eyes, sometimes they get these big ticks on their faces which they can't remove, and then they'll have to rely on someone else assisting them and grooming them, but that's okay because lions are quite sociable and they do groom each other. Now when you're a male lion and you have that big mane, I can't imagine all the ticks and things that are sitting inside of that. It is so thick, even though it does look lovely and smooth and though it's brushed out all the time. I couldn't imagine that you'd be able to run your fingers through his mane. I think that they would get stuck with all the knots that are underneath the top layer of long hair there. But at least he's taking a moment, I suppose, to groom himself, which is great. They get mites and things, obviously, when they get mange. That's a parasite that is attacking or feeding on the hair follicle. So they get an array of different things. I'm sure they must get fleas too. And of course, when they get ants and all sorts of other critters crawling on their skin, I'm sure that must cause an agitation as well. The wind is really picking up. Now, we're not sure when we're going to get rain next. Last night we thought it was going to come, even though none of the apps had sort of predicted it, because there was thunder, there was lightning, there was a thick layer of clouds. We even had a spit of rain for about 10 minutes. Not very heavy rain, just harder than a drizzle. And then it stopped and cleared up again. Here we go. Male's going to approach her. And let's see what Amber Eyes' response is. I don't think it's going to be a very nice response. He looks like he was snarling a little bit too. No. She's definitely not interested in him, though she does act flirty every now and then. She flaps her tail in his face occasionally and sort of rubs up and nudges heads with him. Right, now we're going to have to try and follow them. Now, sorry, I'm going to try and go down the same way that the lions went. It doesn't look too bad, but now to try and get in there is going to be interesting. Now, PK was wondering if Amber Eyes is pregnant, could that change her hormone level slightly? Oh, sorry, that was one lucky scrub hair. Where Amber Eyes sat down, the scrub hair came darting out of it. I'm sure it got absolute fright of its life. Sorry, PK. So it could indeed change her behavior, and possibly the Birmingham could be reading something slightly different. But the other lions are just at the back of the two of them. Sorry, I'm just taking my foot off the brake. She said, leave me alone. Now he doesn't know what to do with himself. He will still lay close by, I'm sure. We probably won't be able to see these lions.
A little bit back. Yeah.
Is that fine?
Well, the good news, everybody, is that the rest of the pride has been found. It's on Twin Dams Road. They seem to have killed two waterbuck. Now, they cannot be far from where Taylor is. And in fact, because let's just find out where Taylor is. I think maybe she must head down there. I'm not sure she's on her radio. We'll just get Kirsten to try and tell her.
Yeah, thanks, Bernie. Yeah, another operation.
I'm just going to try and get hold of her on the radio. Taylor, oh dear. We'll just keep going down here for now. There's just a huge amount of yakking now on the radio.
Thanks, Bertie.
Taylor, come in.
Sorry, stand by.
What's your position?
I'm on Twin Dams Road.
Now, Taylor's right close by, you see. Look at that bird there. Beautiful green woodhoopoe. Copy, Taylor. I think you're closer to the rest of the pride. They seem to be on a kill. I don't know if you want to head there.
Yeah, if I was in the passing with it, they were probably about 20 meters away from me.
Okay, copy, thanks. Sorry, Taylor is actually with the rest of the pride. I'm obviously a little bit confused about what's going on. I didn't realize she was with the rest of the pride as well, so you've probably all seen all of the lions and I haven't. It's very confusing. Okay, we've only seen 2, but the others are close by. We're going to carry on our quest for a leopard. Sure. So those 2 have obviously extracted themselves from the kill site. So that they can be alone. Now, Amber Eyes, of course, is the only one we have not seen. Well, the youngest one is quite possibly pregnant. She's been mating, except there was a male attending her yesterday as well. And Amber Eyes hasn't had any babies yet either. I'm not sure why the 2 of them have been so reticent to fall pregnant. Hornbill on the top of that tree there. Probably looking out to see if there's some termites coming out of this mound. The termites are going to be building thoroughly. It's just to the, yeah, if you zoom, there it goes. Alrighty, let's carry on. Oh, it's so nice having a cool breeze. Nothing quite like sleeping in a sort of patch of your own sweat. Let's hope it stays like this today. Hello, Casey in South Bend. We have seen much in the way of carcasses lately, and very little in the way of hyenas, and you're wondering if we've checked the dens lately. Casey, I haven't checked the dens lately, no, but I also have seen almost no hyena tracks, just 1 or 2 clearly sort of route marching along to somewhere, but not hanging around here. We can do a little pass past them, but I think we'd be seeing a lot more in the way of hyena tracks. You just hear a squirrel alarm calling here. Let's just turn off and have a little bit of a listen. There's nothing particularly upset or vociferous about it. So I think we'll just keep going. As the leaden skies blow in from the southeast. Oh. Is it Halloween today? No, tomorrow. I imagine many of you in the United States, you do a lot of celebrating of Halloween. Many of you probably would have had a party last night, given that it was the Saturday night closest to Halloween. Some of you may even still be at a Halloween party. Right, Taylor has managed to arrive with the rest of the pride and whatever it was that they had for their dinner last night. Let's go and find out what that was.
Now, we were literally just a couple of meters, like I said, from the rest of the pride. We can sort of see amber eyes. They're quite far down on the left, though, behind some trees, but we managed to come around to the rest of them now. Now, there have been reports that apparently they killed a waterbuck, but I can't see anything waterbuck-like here. But also, I suppose a waterbuck wouldn't be very much of a meal for 5 adult lionesses, 2 big males, and of course 8 very hungry little cubs. So possibly they've devoured it already. They've all got big fat bellies. As you can see, the cub at the back is displaying so nicely for us. So perhaps it's just off into the thicket what is left of the carcass. But for the moment, we can't see too much. And I can't see all the cubs just yet either. I can only actually count 2. So I suspect that the other cubs are in the thicket, but all 5 lionesses are here. And of course, Tinyo is in front of us now, and Mfumo is off still with amber eyes. But I think they're going to come towards us now. I can see some movement in the thicket coming this way. So I suspect, we'll see them, I suspect that they're going to come out actually right in front of us. Here we go, you can see that lioness jumping up. Oh, turn your volume up. There's a bit of growling coming between Tinyo and Mfumo. Now, I know that it does seem a little bit on the strange side that they've gone from having a lovely gourmet beef to going for a waterbuck. I know Anna Marie was wondering exactly. You can see the lionesses taking the cubs away. So what happened there is that Tinyo is being very protective over that lioness. And this other lioness came through. She was just really wanting to pass by. And Tinyo was not having any of that and launched into a full attack. Luckily for the lioness, she just acted submissively straight away and he backed off quite quickly. It was quite strange though. Normally the other lionesses will get involved though and have a go back at the male when something like that happens. But not this morning. They very quickly got up and went and obviously moved the cubs further and further away in the thicket. Now we don't have any cubs around us. So there's quite a bit of tension here this morning. But everything seems to be calming down now, except our lioness that got a couple of swipes. She doesn't seem to be very impressed at all. You can see her just sitting to the left, behind all the trees. Doesn't look like she got hurt though. They're quite tough. And like I said, she went straight into a submissive position. She went straight back onto her back, and he then backed down quite quickly. So perhaps there's been quite a bit of tension this morning. We did hear some roaring, and I wonder if that roaring wasn't instigated by Tinyo after perhaps getting into an argument again with one of the lionesses. And if it was a waterbuck that they killed, I can't confirm anything because I haven't seen the carcass just yet. Well, there may have been quite a bit of squabbling as well over that waterbuck, as there isn't much food for them to feed off of. Like I said, we've seen how they're absolutely able to devour buffalo carcasses. Well, let's see what happens. Oh, she's got a bit of a limp now. Now, you saw that lioness, shame she had a bit of a thorn stuck on her rump there, obviously from being pushed over by Tinyo. Now, GNV, you were asking this morning, and you'll just making a comment saying that you've never really seen the males being groomed by the females. Now, I haven't seen this happening yet with the Nkuhumas and the Birminghams, but remember I was just telling you a story about the four-ways males and the Southern Pride? Now, those lionesses absolutely loved, I'm just going to try and turn around here and make sure that nothing falls. Those lionesses were almost infatuated with the four-ways males, and every time the four-ways would go off on a territorial patrol and they would call, the females would always respond, and they would always move together again and find each other. And they loved, like I said, they loved each other. Every time they came back, every member would bump heads and sort of rub their cheeks together, and then it would end up in a big grooming session, males grooming females, females grooming males. And then the Charlestons moved in, and that all stopped. The lionesses sort of acted quite similar towards the males, how we see the Nkuhumas acting towards the Birminghams. So it can happen, and I suppose it's like in life. Unfortunately, here with these lions, these females know that if they don't accept these males, then they run the risk of losing their life too, so they sort of just tolerate them to the absolute bare minimum. And then occasionally you see, like where I've witnessed, the four-ways and the Southern Pride absolutely adoring each other, and that occasionally happens too. And one of the little cubs coming out to see what's going on, but now going back into the thicket where the other three lionesses are. And we'll probably try and venture in there at some point too. I think what we're going to do is let's actually try and poke our nose in a little bit further. I want to see if we can't perhaps see the kill. It's quite thick in there though. But I see there's a little guarri tree that perhaps I can just nudge out of the way, and then we might be able to see it. But I'm going to try and keep my distance from Tinyo. He seems very, very protective this morning, as we've just witnessed. Not that I'm worried about him, sort of having a go at we're in the vehicle, not at all, but I don't want to agitate any situations further, so we'll just leave him lay by all on his lonesome. Let's see, I'm just trying to find here a little bit. I'm just going to go over and try and squeeze past this guarri shrub. You're right there, David. Luckily there's no thorns on this one. We're going to squeeze in here. Right, I've got to do a little maneuver here. There we go. Sorry, guarri tree, but I know you're going to bounce back up. You're quite resilient. Can you see the little cubs there? So we can see all the cubs now. We'll have a little count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there's 8. I think I counted 8. I don't see any carcass just yet though. I'm still looking around me to try and see what they've fed on, but I don't see anything just yet. Well, the important thing is not the carcass, but is indeed that they have big bellies. The only thing though is Amber Eyes doesn't look like she's eaten, and neither does Mfumo. They're actually walking towards us. Let's see, this is going to be interesting. Turn your volume up. Tinyo's already growling. You can see these males are both very protective over the lionesses that they've got. As soon as either one of them stands up, they both start growling. Now, chatting about earlier the situation where we had Tinyo sort of launch into a full charge and push one of the other lionesses over and swipe at her a couple of times. I know that Marianne was wondering, won't the female lions stand together and try and push a male out? Now, they'll indeed do that, and that's why I was so shocked. But perhaps because all the young cubs are around, they wanted to try and get them out of the way, out of harm's way. That's obviously quite important. And I think that's why the lioness is sort of scattered. But typically, yes, they will indeed do so. I've seen it many times. So I'm just trying to duck. They're walking away now. Lots and lots of little bits of growling. Now there's actually an array of different birds that we've got here in this drainage line. Melinda, you were asking which bird is whistling in the background. Now, I'm not sure which one you're talking about for the moment, but there's some robins. Sounds like some white-browed scrub robins calling. There was also an orange-breasted bushshrike and a couple of doves, as well as a black cuckoo singing the... He was also there doing his thing. But if it was a sort of a pretty tune, sort of with a nice melody, it was probably one of the robins. Maybe even a white-throated robin, or, like I said, maybe even a brown scrub robin. I think I can see I think I can actually see a white-browed scrub robin, but it's very far away. I don't think you'll be able to see it. I just saw it jumping and fluttering through the leaves. Now, I'm just trying to duck. It's quite difficult. You can see them in there. Everybody's sort of on edge at the moment, especially the cubs. They seem to be watching quite carefully, and they're looking sort of towards Tinyo, and I wonder if they aren't a little bit nervous of him. No, he doesn't seem to mind the cubs either so much. We had it the other evening, where he was quite happy to have them chasing his tail, and one or two of them actually jumped on him, pretending as if he was perhaps a buffalo. But I'd also be a little bit nervous of him with the way he's behaving at the moment. He seems to not be in a very good place, a very protective place over that lioness. Well, these cubs don't seem to be too bothered. They've got full bellies. Now, it seems as though these little cubs are actually waking up now, because when we first arrived they said that they were fast asleep. So perhaps they must have killed this waterbuck or whatever it was that they eat, and maybe they killed it sort of late last night, and then they've been resting sort of throughout the early hours of the morning. Because I didn't see any blood on any of the lions, and that's typically what we see even after an hour or so of them just having killed something, or a few hours. There's still a bit of evidence around, and typically some blood on the paws or on the face where they've perhaps missed and they haven't groomed themselves. So I think that they killed whatever it was quite a few hours ago. And they're moving further and further into this drainage, which is not great for us. Now, Price in Texas, you've actually asked a very good question this morning, a question that I haven't ever been asked before. So Price wants to know, if the lions' tongues are able to lick the hair off of their prey, why doesn't it remove the hair off their own bodies? Now, I think that depends on how much force they put behind that licking motion. And I think when they groom themselves, they're a lot more gentle. I'm sure you've seen when they do lick a buffalo carcass or a kudu or whatever they may have caught, you can hear that sort of sound. It sounds like sandpaper. And when we watch them groom themselves, they seem to be a little bit more gentle. We don't really hear too much sound coming from their tongues, sort of that rasping sound. So I think it's something just as simple as how much pressure they sort of put behind that licking motion. You can see that lioness is getting uncomfortable with that cub sitting on top of her. And like I said, the flies are about. So I wonder how poor Tingana is doing, wherever he may be, because we know he doesn't seem to like the flies too much. There's an orange-breasted bush shrike calling now. Now it's stopped. Can hear some brown-headed parrots flying over her head. Now these little ones have gone back to sleep again. The occasional swat of the tail and the paws. Those flies. Tamira, good morning to you. Tamira, you would like to know if perhaps, sorry, I'm just going to watch these other two on the other side. I'm surrounded by lions at the moment. Now you want to know that when the lions are mating, will the male prevent the female from eating? Not necessarily. However, typically what happens with a pride is they do normally get separated. They get left behind, like what we're seeing here. Not that we've seen amber eyes mating in, well, today at least. I haven't been with the lions for a couple of days. But that's typically what happens. So it doesn't really look like they've had too much to eat, especially Mfumo. He looked very much on the slender side compared to the rest of the lions with their full bellies. So maybe they missed out this time, but they're edging closer and closer back towards the pride. But the only problem now is these lions seem to be up and moving deeper into this drainage, which is going to be very, very difficult for us to try and navigate through. I'm going to have to try and find another way in. Oh, there we go. And mating. No. No. Not yet. He was ready, and she just said, no, I'm going to go back to sleep for a while. It wasn't really a proper attempt, I suppose. But we'll keep an eye on them. The little one trying to have a suckle. I think you're a bit old to still be suckling. I don't know how much milk this lioness is producing anymore. I don't think she's producing anything. Right. I think I'm going to see if I can try and find another way around into this drainage system. And while I do that, let's go back across to James.
Now I'm afraid we've had to, Brian has had to retire hurt for the day, everybody. He has got a migraine headache. I don't know if you've ever had one of those where your vision goes and then it feels like your brain is going to explode. Well, he has one of those at the moment, so he's man down. But I'm not alone on the vehicle, everybody. Fresh from his sleep-in of 15 minutes extra and a hot cup of coffee, which is still with us now, Willem Durenbrock. There we are. It's finished, is it? Yeah, he's finished it already. Anyway, he's stepped into the breach. Quickly back to Taylor.
Turn your volume up. Now, I know I keep shouting, turn your volume up. I want you to hear everything that I'm able to hear. There is serious tension. Tinyo attacked one of the... I'm going to go forward. Very difficult to see, but he's fighting everybody this morning. Everybody except the lioness that he's interested in mating with, and I think that that's the young lioness. Careful, little cub, you better move out of the way. He's not in the best of moods today. And it's funny, every time he seems to have a go at whichever lioness it may be, whoever gets too close, he does this roar afterwards to just sort of assert and show his dominance. And then, of course, that gets Mfumo quite riled up. I wonder if there isn't going to be a clash between the two of them this afternoon, or if indeed Mfumo is going to be clever and just sort of keep his distance away from the pride. But I suspect what's going to happen is the other lionesses are going to get up now and move away completely from Tinyo. Well, that's what I would do, because there's now been a number of fights in just a short amount of time. And that's what's happening. The cubs are being sort of rallied together. There's a couple of them moving off to the right, but we shall try and find another way across and into this thicket. You can see the one little cub still sitting there just to the right of the other lioness and Tinyo, and perhaps it will follow. Everybody else is getting up and going towards the lioness that's moving away now. We've lost sight of her though. And now it seems to settle it down again. Now, we've been chatting about sort of Tinyo's behavior today, and I know that Jason was wondering if any of the other guides would be notified. Probably. If I bump into any of them, I will let them know, but it's not something that I'd necessarily sort of mention on the radio. This is, of course, just lions being lions and the general dynamics that we see in a pride. Sometimes they're tolerant of each other. And, well, like humans, sometimes you have a bad day and then you just take it out on everybody. And I think that's exactly what's happening here. He's always been the feisty one towards since I've seen him. I've noticed he seems to have the shortest temper out of the three Birminghams that I've seen. But I don't think he'll act that way towards us. It sounds like we've either got a Jacobin or a Levalence cuckoo flying around here. Have a look up top of that tree. Can you see it? All the way up there? And the big tree in the distance? There's one of the... There it is. That was a Jacobin's cuckoo that we very quickly saw. I hope you got a quick glimpse of that. That was amazing. Finally! Yes! I've been saying for I don't know how many weeks now that I need to get a cuckoo, any of the cuckoos, on screen. Woohoo! And the crowd goes wild. But finally, a Jacobin cuckoo. But let's see. I'm wondering. Okay, it seems like the lions are actually moving off. I would like to move as well and try and keep up with the cubs, because I think if we can get ahead of the action, then it might be better just to sort of sit and wait and then get the other lions to come to us. Now I need to try and maneuver out of here. Now I'm going to do some serious maneuvering, and while I do that, let's go back across to James.
We've come to Sandy Patch open area just to see if there isn't something here. There are some impala which we'll stop and have a look at, and we can also have a listen and assess whether there are any leopards knocking about here. Shadow's tracks were heading into this area yesterday, but unfortunately she was not found. Righty. There you are, Viam, your first animal of the morning, the great Epsimerus melampus, the impala. And in the background you might be able to hear the call of the Senegal lapwing. A very peaceful morning. And the wind should be pretty good for hunting if you happen to be a predator. So maybe we'll be very lucky with some leopard. Marvelous. Let us continue. See what else is around the corner. Now, with the summertime, and of course we have a lot of rain some of the time, and then the reptiles and those sorts of things come out. And Daniel, you're wondering about snakes and whether or not, or what kinds we get here, and if an elephant can be bitten by a snake. I'm going to say the latter, no, an elephant can't be bitten by a snake because their skin is so very thick. And that is what pachyderm means. It means very thick skin, not, as I said just before I went on leave, wrinkly skin. It means very thick skin. Thank you, Judy H. again. Now, and because of that, I think you'd probably find that a snake like a mamba or the longest fanged snake out here is a puff adder. I think you'd find that they wouldn't actually sort of manage to break the skin at all. Anyway, so for snakes, the most common around here, we get yellow-bellied sand snakes. They're quite common. Black mamba is quite common too. The Mozambique and spitting cobra and snouted cobra are two of the cobra species that are common. The puff adder and night adder, two of the adder species, which are quite similar to rattlesnakes. They're from the same, I think, from the same family as the rattlesnakes, so they're around. Then we do get African rock pythons. They are relatively common. Tree snakes also, and vine snakes. Those are the main representatives of all the major families of snakes that we get out here. But you know, we don't see a lot of snakes. There are a lot of them around, but they are so nervous of us, and they're so nervous generally, that they move away. The big thing that we don't want to find, of course, is a snake in the tent. Now, the tent, of course, provides ideal snake habitat, especially on a day like today when it's a bit windy. Snakes don't like that very much. They like to be down in the shelter or in the sort of a hole or something like that. And there's some rather convenient spots that they can climb into the tent. And we're always a little bit careful when we open up the tent that there isn't a snake in there. And a snake is only dangerous, just like most other animals in the world, if you corner it. If it feels like it cannot get away from you, then it might try and bite you. But as long as it has the feeling that it can get away, it will turn and run long before it stands up and tries to defend itself. Snakes, I suppose, rather like sharks, are deeply terrifying to people. And yet they kill so very few people compared with other things, like cows, for example. Cows kill more people than snakes. Good grief, what's happened here? Jim, any idea? Construction of a new toll road. That is interesting. I see the roads being moved, perhaps. Not sure what that means. Now this clearing used to be one of Shadow's favourite haunts, and then she did a long move to the south, and I'm not sure why she did that. I think it may have been pressure from her mother, because her mother is spending a lot more time further south of her old domain. Now let's have a listen to some birds quickly, because I heard the call of the Claster's cuckoo. And a bit like the Diedericks, very similar colour. I'll show you a picture of them. They are not easy to see at all. Just quickly try and find them for you. Cuckoo. Yes, Viam, thank you. Thank you. I'm doing my best. There we go. Now, there's the Claster's cuckoo, and there is the Diedericks cuckoo, and they look very bright and green, don't they? But that green is not a pigment, unlike with the Taracos, for example. It is iridescence in much the same way that a starling achieves its colours, which means that unless it's in good light, they're nothing like as green as that. They are basically, they look black when they fly over, and they look very similar if you see them very sort of close together. Claster's and the Diedericks cuckoo. Beautiful birds if you can get them in the good light. Wonderful. There we are. Emma, on the subject of snakes, of course, and what could possibly want to eat a snake, you say, are there any birds that eat snakes? There are plenty of birds that eat snakes. The most obvious one, I suppose, would be a secretary bird, which is a huge bird that stands almost 4 feet tall. with their long legs that it's able to stomp on snakes with. Then, of course, there are the snake eagles. We get two species here, brown snake eagle and black-chested snake eagle, black-breasted snake eagle, and they eat snakes quite a lot. What else have I seen eating snakes? I've seen batelier eating snakes. I've seen some of the kingfishers eating small snakes, the woodland kingfisher, the brown-hooded kingfisher. They will eat small snakes. So lots of animals out here are very well equipped to catch and eat snakes. Here are some of Shadow's favourite prey. And Dustin with a D, you're also wondering where snakes live. This is interesting. This impala has mange. Dustin with a D, you're wondering about snakes and where they live, and yes, they will go into termite mounds. Now that mangy impala, everybody, we've seen some mangy impalas, and the mange, the sarcoptic mange, which is a mite that burrows into the skin in the same way that humans get scabies. Mange, I think, has made a return to this area because of the drought. I think it's made those that have compromised immune systems and those that are not so good at parasite resistance, I think they are the ones getting hurt by the mange. And obviously little lion cubs like the Styx lions, well, they're all gone now on account of the mange. And you'll notice that it has not been universal. It hasn't hit every single one of the impala, and it certainly hasn't hit every single one of the lions. So I think some just have a much better natural immunity to it. That's not so nice to see. But I'd say it's only less than 1% of the impala that I've seen have got that. I can smell waterbuck, that lovely musty smell. There's definitely been some work done on this road. Sorry, Bill, I did get a question from you, but I'm struggling to hear Kirsten. I think the question was, why do they call a group of baby impala a creche? Is that correct? Yeah, I can't hear the final control. I'm going to assume that is the question you asked me. Bill, it's called a creche because it's a group of youngsters looked after by one or two adults. So in the same way that a human creche would be a sort of almost preschool where you take kids to go and sort of be looked after by one adult or two adults or a little group of adults. It's the same thing with the creche of little impala lambs. They're not always with their mothers. They're in a group together as the youngsters, and they'll be watched over by one or two or three or four females. And that's why it's called a creche. Not really sure why we can't hear FC from here. Okay, right. I think we're going back to Taylor and the Lions. I will try and sort the communications in the meantime.
Now we've managed to finally navigate our way through a variety of different trees, but we're down into the drainage, and look at this happy sight that we have found. Well, it's a happy sight for at least 3 of the lionesses for the moment, but Tinyo is itching ever so closer and closer. The other lioness is leading him towards the rest of the pride, and every time he moves, well, you can see the fear in the Nkuhuma's faces. They're keeping well out of his way today. But for now, they seem to be all right. And of course, all the little cubs are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all 8 of them with big bellies, suckling, some of them having a sleep. Is exactly what the others are doing. And that's good to see that they're all looking so healthy. Now, Tina from Ontario is wondering, how do you tell which cubs belong to which mother? That is a very good question. Sorry, I'm just listening. I can see amber eyes slowly coming towards us. You can see it just in the thicket. Now this is going to be interesting. Tina, I'm going to get back to your question a little bit further left. Here we go. Tinyo is also up. Amber eyes is saying go away. And she keeps doing this. She doesn't move far and very quickly. She sort of just moves along quietly. Now you see how Mfumo is indeed marking his territory as he does it. He came right out of the bushes as if to say to Tinyo, yes, I'm also marking my territory here. Because every time Tinyo gets up, he does the same thing. Sorry, I'm just pushing my hat down onto my head. He gets up, he rubs his cheek on the tree he's close by to. And he also sprays and marks his territory. They give each other the double eye. I wonder if there can be a bit of a dispute if this decides to get a little bit closer.
Sorry about that, everybody. I think it's a slightly dodgy signal area where Taylor is. We'll try and sort that out. And again, I think the cloud really does make a difference. The atmospheric conditions, which the physicist will swear blind, make no difference at all. VM, I think you're fairly convinced they make a difference, aren't you? Yeah. See? Even VM thinks they make a difference. So we'll get that back online as soon as we can. I'm afraid I have found nothing so far since I last saw it. No, that's rubbish. We did see something. Unfortunately, it flew away. A lesser spotted eagle, which I think would be quite a nice addition to some of your bird lists. I'm sorry that it flew away, but it got very frightened by us, and then it was attacked by a swarm of drongos, and so it flew off. We're coming towards the big Balanites tree, but I haven't found one track of a leopard. I also haven't seen an elephant since I've been back, which I feel is very unfair. Right. Let's just go around the corner here. And then we'll have another listen out. That's a lovely sound, isn't it, VM? Yes. Here's the big Balanites, and I just wanted to see if we couldn't perhaps hear some alarm calls. But at the moment, nothing. Right, let me just quickly jump out the car. Now here we have the Natal Gwari. That feeling when you think something's watching you. This is the same tree, and you can see one is obviously the much younger leaves. And I just want to taste the difference because I suspect that the fence, I'm not going to feed these to VM so early on in the day. I suspect that the fence in the little leaves is greater than that in the big leaves. And it is. These things are very hairy. They've both got quite a lot of tannin or sort of drying up chemical compounds in them that will make them taste very nice. But these are like one of those peaches, those yellow peaches that are unfortunately covered in hairs, and that's to prevent, of course, them being preyed upon too early. What are those peaches called again? I've forgotten. You remember the yellow ones? Oh, come on,
Sweetie ones.
Yeah, and I couldn't remember the other day what they were called. There we go, cling peaches. Thank you. Cling peaches. They had many hairs like cling peaches. Gosh, this does seem to be a slightly bereft area of life forms. Never mind. My luck must improve at some stage. is an immutable law of the jungle. We still have no signal with Taylor, I'm afraid. So you're going to have to stick with me in my search at the moment. Just a reminder again, remember, not tomorrow, the next day, Tuesday, the 1st of November, we are going to be changing times while we look at these crowned lapwings, who probably have a nest around here. We're going to shift half an hour earlier in the morning, so it'll be 5 to 8 Central African time. And then as we go into the evening, 4 to 7 Central African time, half an hour later. That's to take more advantage of the crepuscular atmosphere, or the crepuscular time of day, which is dawn and dusk. They're rather special birds, these, you know. Humble, but like the impala, oft overlooked. They have a number of very clever adaptations, the most clever of which is that they are water independent. They do not need to drink. They have very clever salt glands on the tops of their noses, and that helps them to get rid of any salt, and so they get enough water from what they eat. Marvellous. Well done, Vim. Sarah, while we were looking at that bird there, you say, what is the largest bird in the region? Well, Sarah, the largest bird in the region is the largest bird in the world, and that is the ostrich. And they do occur around here, on cheetah plains mostly. We have seen one or two on Djuma, but they're mostly on cheetah plains. But the largest flying bird out here would be the Kori bustard, and that indeed is the largest flying bird in the world, weighing in at between sort of 12 and 15 kilograms, depending on the individual. That's up to about 30 pounds, maybe a little bit more than 30 pounds. And then from the Kori bustard, the next biggest would be the Cape vulture, which is probably, well, it's almost the same size, probably almost 12 kilograms. Some of them really big ones. The ostrich, of course, stands well over 6 feet tall and weighs, I think, a really big one will weigh about 90 kilos, which is about 200 pounds. I'm slightly depressed that there are further impala up ahead, indicating that they are either being stalked by a leopard, or, more likely, there is no leopard around. Anyway, we shall persevere. Let's just see if we can't scan through this herd and see if there aren't any more examples of mange. And of course, as with many of the predators, the drought has been a bit of a boom time for animals like wild dogs. And Gregory, you're wondering whether or not we get hunting dogs or wild dogs here. We do, from time to time. But they have got massive, massive home ranges, which means that they're here for sometimes for a week or two, and then they're gone for months at a time sometimes. But I know the 2 packs in the Sabi sand have denned and successfully raised pups this year, so that's very good, and they would have had a very good time of it on account of the drought. Lots of sort of animals suffering from various kinds of drought stress, which makes them, of course, much easier to kill if you happen to be a predator. Let me just check the nesting site here of the shikra. There was a nest of a shikra there, everybody, a little goshawk, but unfortunately it's been moved. Sarah, yes, mange absolutely can be fatal, and it is fatal in many cases. We lost 8 Styx cubs to mange. They've all gone one by one. We watched them die. It was very unpleasant indeed. So they're gone now. But it is also equally possible that an animal with a good immune system and enough to eat will recover from mange. So one of the Birmingham boys had horrible mange all the way down his stomach, and we think he's the one who gave it to the rest of them. But he survived fine. And that little the little cub in the Nkuhuma pride that's got it seems to be, I think, coping okay. It's not getting any thinner, still eating as much as the others, and so I think he might recover as well. But it does kind of sort the wheat from the chaff, Sarah. So, I mean, if you have a weak immune system and you get to a position where you get mange in an area like this, it can be very, very difficult. And you have only to ask the Styx pride, and like most diseases, it'll affect largely the young, very young, or the very old, or the infirm. Right, Taylor's got some signal. Rather than me waffling at you, let's go and have a look at her lions.
So unfortunately we had to leave those lions. There just wasn't very much signal. They were, like I said, they were down deep into the drainage now. So we're moving along, and what I thought that I'd like to go and do is perhaps go and check on the magpie shrike nest that we found a couple of weeks ago now, I suppose it is. We've only seen those little chicks once, and I'd be eager to see if perhaps mom is around or dad is around and feeding those little ones. So we're slowly making our way there. We've got a bit of a way to go, but that's all right. Oh, let's have a look. Are you going to sit still? Oh, never mind. Not with those squeaky brakes. That Birchall starling is not going to sit still, but we'll catch them. Who else is flying around here? I'm seeing some interesting colored birds this morning. It's just the babblers who you can hear. Let's see if I don't think we'll get a view of them. The babblers never like to stick around for too long. They sort of just shout and declare their territory and then off they go. But let's actually have a look at this turtle dove. That's someone we don't get to see all the time. Hello, turtle dove. Now, you can often get this bird confused with a red-eyed dove, but you saw there, we'll try and get another view of it. I'm going to go forward again, but I want to very quickly chat about the red-eyed dove versus the turtle dove. We'll get another glimpse as I go around the corner. We'll get it drinking water. Please don't fly away. There we go. Now, if you look very carefully, of course you can see that this turtle dove, it had a black eye. I'm sure you managed to see that. And of course the red-eyed dove has a red eye, but that's not where the specific identifying features stop and start. Now normally when we see these birds, it's very difficult to try and identify and tell the difference when they're both flying at the same time. But a turtle dove has got white wing, sort of tail feathers. So when they fly, you see how they sort of fan their tails out slightly. On the bottom edge, you'll see white, whereas a red-eyed dove has got grey tail feathers. That's probably the easiest way to tell the difference is when they are flying around. Otherwise, it's virtually impossible. They've both got the black ring on their necks, or half a ring, I suppose. But let's continue and get away and get around. Right. We're going to try and zip on very quickly around to the magpie shrike nest and see what's happening there. But while we try and navigate that way, let's go back to James, who's got a wildebeest.
There is a wildebeest, everybody, a sad wildebeest, because he's almost alone. There are one or two others around here, but it is not exactly a vast herd. And they too will be hoping to... just watched a flock of birds fly past everyone. I was slightly arrested by it. It was a flock of wattle starlings, which we saw earlier today. But the wildebeest too will be coming towards the birthing season, the calving season, and in this area that's not really a huge event, given the number that we have. But they will give birth fairly soon too, and they did very well last year. Let's hope they do the same again. And like I've said to you before, there used to be 20,000 or so that used to travel down to this area for this time of the year, for the summertime, and they'd drink from the for the winter time. They would have left this area during the summer and gone up to the annual rivers like the Timbavati up north and one or two others. But now just a couple of hundred left. And there are the wattled starlings, well spotted, Vim. And they move in these huge nomadic flocks. They're not migrants, which means that they can be here in winter, but they often aren't. They often aren't here in summer either. They migrate, or they're very nomadic. They decide to go where the food is good. The Bedouin of the bird world, if you like. Very nice. Righty, on we go. Right. Taylor has got a very small antelope to show you. Let's go and see that.
Now we've come across this male steenbok, and I'm so surprised that he hasn't run away from us. But look at the big injury that he's had on his back. Can you see that? Now I think that this was a very lucky steenbok, and I think it could have been possibly grabbed partially by a leopard, and has caused that sort of big gash on its back. You can see it almost looks like there was another old scar running down the length of its back. Well, that's incredible. It doesn't look very new. It looks like a very, very old injury. But just from those lines and those shapes, I think that it would most likely, the culprit would have been perhaps a leopard that grabbed it. And lucky for the steenbok, being such a fighter, it got away. But he does look old. He looks like he's been through quite a bit. Just looking at his face, of course, he was in a very old sort of expression. Ears are a little bit tatty. Hey, beautiful, but at least you managed to get away from whatever may have tried to have grabbed you. And he's being so calm. He's so close to us as well. He's probably only a couple of meters away. We'll just watch him and see what he does. You can see also all the flies hanging around. They're everywhere at the moment. But we have also been seeing a lot of carcasses, and of course when there are a lot of carcasses around, well, flies lay their eggs. Oh, and there he turned into a steenbok and ran away from us. There we go. That's more of the behavior of a steenbok. But like I said, I'm not surprised that we're also seeing this sort of abundance of flies at the moment. With all those carcasses that have been around, we've been seeing lots and lots of maggots, and of course, well, they eventually pupate and turn into flies themselves, which is wonderful. Where are all the chameleons so that the chameleons can eat all of the flies? And the bee eaters and all those things that are really good at catching flying insects, we need you to come here now and eat them all for us. Okay, right. We're not anywhere near our... Oh, have a look at this. Sorry, we're not anywhere near Hyena Road, and I'm very squeaky. Look at this termite mound. Look at all these new chimneys that have been developed. Can you see that? I'm actually going to go... David, I'm going to jump out very quickly. Right. Let me jump out. I want to see if these termites are perhaps utilizing this cool day and are working. Oh wow! David, can you zoom into over here? There are so many termites. I don't know if you can see them. My goodness, I wish you could come out here. I'm just going to have a look down inside. If I can just describe what's actually going on inside this mound, there are thousands and thousands of large fungus-growing termites currently inside here. You can see all the difference of the mud. You can see how easy it is to break into my fingers, or break with my fingers, sorry. And it's still actually wet. I can still feel the moisture in this. So they've been working on this probably for the last couple of days now. And all the soil that's been deposited out and around over there, well, that's relatively new, probably from last night. And it seems as though they're still walking and utilizing this cool day, overcast day. They are able to work and not, of course, get singed by the sun. But that is beautiful. And it's amazing how they've been doing a lot of work on this mound. There's a lot of new improvements and chambers that look like they're being built. Right, that's quite nice. Now, having an opening like that, though, is quite risky, because you can imagine a hornbill's going to fly over there, perch itself on top, well, and it's a buffet of termites. And I suspect the hoopoes, the green wood hoopoes, are going to do something along those lines. We often see them doing that. Let's jump back in. Well, it's exciting to see the termites hard at work. Here we go. But let's continue on where we're supposed to be going. You know me, I get distracted. Squeaky brakes. Right. Get my little booster seat all sorted. There you go. Now that's a bit more comfortable. Oh, we're probably going to go up and around and eventually jump onto Central at some point. We'll probably actually go along Vulture's Nest and then we'll get to Hyena Road quite quickly. Right. My goodness, it's getting quite cold all of a sudden, and David and I didn't bring jackets. Oh well. We'll have to brave the cold weather this morning. But now, I think let's go back across to James and see if everything is going well on his side.
Everyone, it is going well on our side. Well, it's relatively well, of course. It's Sunday morning in the bush. Of course it's going well. And there was something vitally important I wanted to tell you. Oh yes, I've put my jersey on because it has got a little cold. I don't think Taylor took one out with her. Now, this is the site of a dunging. And you can't see down here, can you? A little bit. Here? See that? So that, everybody, is where hippopotamus has come along and made his territorial marking. He's pushed his bottom up against this tree. He's started to produce the dung, and then he's flapped his tail from side to side. It's like a sort of little paddle, and he sprayed his dung all the way over here. And of course, this gave rise to the legend of why it is that the hippo does this, and apparently it was in order to show the Lord that he wasn't eating fish. That's why he's allowed to stay in the water, you see. You can see that indeed he doesn't eat fish at all, he eats only grass. It's not very nice smelling. It's okay. It's just grass, not fish. Plug myself back in. There we go. Now, we talked a little bit about the nomadic birds and the moving of the wildebeest, or the old moving of the wildebeest. And Jason, you're wondering about whether any animals come with the water, for example, eels or crocodiles. Not, I would say, for probably more than 1,000 years, simply because these rivers have not flowed for a very long time. No eels. There are in some of the bigger rivers up here, like the Letaba River. I know they find eels in those, and so they come up seasonally with the water. But the rivers here flow so seldom and with so little water that no, that doesn't happen. Sometimes, though, there's, for example, a place called Ngala up north of where we are now. There's a big river called the Timbavati River that runs through it, and it only runs when in years of very severe rain. But in years of very, very severe rain, yes, you can find the odd crocodile in it, but that's normally a crocodile that's been washed down from somewhere, from a dam perhaps that's on the river, and it gets washed over the dam wall and sent down river. So that does happen from time to time, but crocodiles will move into these areas temporarily, and that's why you never get into any water that you do not, that you don't have sight on sort of 24 hours a day. So they will just arrive quite suddenly and take up residence for a few days and eat whatever happens to get into the water. So crocodiles you've always got to be careful of. Now we'll do a little trip through the Marmati drainage, and then I think we'll go back to those lions and see if we don't have better luck with our signal than Taylor had. I suspect, however, the fact that we are only operating on one mast is going to make that difficult. This will be a good test now. Now, we did get a little bit of rain last night, 3 drops, Vim, I think it was, or maybe 4. 8. Ooh, William says 8 drops. There was a great crashing of thunder and a flashing of lightning and a howling of wind, and 8 drops of water fell out of the sky. It was pathetic. Anyway, that's how it goes out here. And while I was gone, there was a hailstorm, and ex-Ranger, you're wondering if the tent was damaged. It was, actually. Some of the poles were bent, but it survived very well, and nothing inside it was broken, most importantly, so no, it's actually fine. It seems to be entirely okay at this stage. I haven't checked it this morning, but the wind we had was not quite as severe as it has been, and it wasn't very prolonged. Come on, Karula, where are you? There's not even a track, you know. Anyway, we might be lucky. Also hoping for the Diederik's cuckoo. Sandra, you're in California and you're wondering about rhino and whether we have rhino here. We do, Sandra. South Africa is actually I think has the highest population of white rhino anywhere in the world, and that's on account of very successful conservation practices here. And we don't show them, though, on this show, mainly in sort of deference to their plight. It's highly unlikely that a poacher could be watching the show and would be able to get some kind of location of a rhino from watching the show, but just in case that could be the case, we just don't show them. So if we do see them, we just drive past them. Sometimes they get caught on camera, and we'll just acknowledge that and move on. But they are around. And Lisa, you're wondering if I've ever managed to catch a poacher. No, I haven't caught a poacher, Lisa. I've been around during 1 or 2 poaching raids when we've tried to catch poachers. There are sometimes poachers onto these reserves. Yes, certainly rhino have been poached in this area, but the security now is so tight that it is almost impossible for a poacher to get onto this reserve and then escape without being found. That said, the vast majority of poaching incidents that happen in a place like the Sabi Sand are caused by poverty and people trying to snare things for the pot. So they'll try and catch a water bucket or impala or something like that just to feed the family. And that does happen from time to time in these areas. There's a wonderful story of a chap called what was his name? I want to say it was Shivambalana, but it wasn't. It was something quite similar, actually. In fact, it may well have been Shivambalana. Anyway, Shivambalana, we'll call him Shivambalana for the sake of it, was a poacher, a notorious poacher of the Sabi Sand. And he used to take everything. Well, I don't know if he took any rhino, but he used to take things like buffalo regularly. He'd catch them, normally with a snare, sometimes with a spear. He'd spear warthog and that sort of thing. But he was a phenomenal tracker and phenomenal hunter, if you like. And for years and years he evaded being caught. Everyone knew who he was and what he was doing, but you know, he was very clever at not being caught, especially not red-handed. And then one day we knew exactly who he was. A friend of mine said, you know what, it's counterproductive trying to catch this chap and sort of discipline him and send him to the police. Why don't we try and employ him? And so that's what they did. And it took a little while to get, because every time they arrived at his house he'd run away. But they knew where his house was. And what they did was they eventually employed him to track. And he became a tracking teacher because he was such a brilliant tracker. And he's now, and I think he has been, fully employed at one of the lodges around here for the last, I don't know, must be 10 years now, as a highly successful tracker who has turned his ways to conservation. And what a wonderful story that is about using traditional skills of tracking and turning a poacher around and turning him much more in favor of conservation rather than going through the kind of a punishment of a trial or a sort of an arrest. Far more effective if you can do it that way. And he's now making a huge contribution to the land that he, well, I hesitate to say pillage because it's not like he could have been doing anything else. Certainly the landscape that he used to ravage is now under his protection. And still I failed to find anything large at all. Hello, Paul. You say, why don't we hear about buffalo poaching if it's just for the meat? Well, Paul, a buffalo is one of the most difficult animals to kill out here, of course. If you are going to hunt, if you're going to hunt for meat, you're usually so poor that you're using a snare, and to catch a buffalo in a snare is no mean feat. I have seen it happen every so often, but you know, we don't hear a huge amount about poaching at all in this particular area, and that's simply because, well, we don't hear about every incident, and also because the security in the Sabi Sand is very, very strong. Further up north in the Kruger Park, I've absolutely seen snared animals before, and I've taken down many snares myself. But you don't hear about it because it doesn't happen very often, and it's normally something small like an impala or a bushbuck or a nyala that gets caught. Right, Taylor has one of those buffaloes, no wire around its leg. Let's go and see it.
No, this is a very healthy looking buffalo that we've got. He's actually looking in lovely condition. Just his hips showing just a little bit, but not very much. The rest of his body seems to be nice and plump. And of course, like the buffalo should, making use of every bit of grass that has come through at the moment. So head is on the ground, doesn't even really care that we're here. I don't even think he's really looked at us just yet. But he's a lovely bull. And it seems as though there's one more in the distance. It's just the two Duggar boys here. Now, speaking about poaching of buffalo, something that I experienced quite a bit of in is that the locals actually would come in and kill quite a few buffalo to take back for bush meat. So that was something that they did quite a bit. Unfortunately, in those sort of poorer areas, they don't have the anti-poaching systems that we sort of have in place in this area. So, for instance, let me just give you an example. In Zambia, there's no fences. So you have these big wilderness areas, and then just on the outside you have game management areas where you'll have a couple sort of more lodges, but not in the official national parks. And then on the outside of the game management areas, which we called GMAs for short, then you get all the villages. So it was very, very easy, and we'd often come across people just walking in the middle of nowhere. And you knew that they were out indeed looking for some meat to perhaps take back. When they were walking, though, they would just catch things like impala and various antelope, but occasionally they'd somehow sneak in with vehicles, and they would then take large animals such as buffalo. It's sort of one of their favorite things to take. Now, we've been seeing some interesting behavior with the buffalo over the last couple of weeks. They seem to be on we have to walk around the buffalo on eggshells. Remember, I had my incident when one came charging out towards me. And I know that it was one that didn't quite like Byron a couple of days ago while he was in the vehicle, which is not very nice. But these guys seem to be very relaxed with us now. And I presume that that's just because it's almost like overnight, the grass has grown a couple of inches. It's looking good again. And they're able to sort of not feel so hungry anymore and not have to feed on leaves. They're actually able to graze again. I think that's always the hardest for the animals is after the rain. I'm pretty sure that they know that the grass will come eventually, but it's sort of those couple of days that it takes to wait before it gets long enough that they're able to eat it. Because it was just yesterday, well, not yesterday, the day before yesterday, that we were seeing the buffalo eating leaves and sort of not eating any grass. There we go, but you can see them making use of it. Oh, but let's go up ahead as we've got Mr. and Mrs. Magpie Shrike's Nest. We're on Hyena Road now, so that's just up and around the corner. Let's see if they're home and how those little chicks are doing. Right, let's see. I can see the nest. Is there anything on top of it? I think I can see hey, here we go. Just in time. Just in time. Darby, I don't want to stop too close. You can see one of the birds jumping on the nest now. Here we go. Here we go. There's the little bird heads. There they are. 1, 2, 3. I think I saw 3 little heads pop up. Oh, this is wonderful. The last time we came around here, nobody was home. You can still see one little head bobbing up and down there just in the middle of your screen, in the middle of the nest. Now, this looks like it's the male, a magpie shrike. Now, there's very few ways you can tell the difference between the two. It's really just that the white wing paneling that you see on the sides of their wings there. And, well, we'll see it again. The males have very, very white... Oh, there's all sorts of birds jumping around. The males have very white wing panels, whereas the females seem to be a little bit more of a creamish color. I'm going to go around and we're going to wait, and we'll see if they come back again. Maybe, I know from this other side we do get a little bit of a better view, so we're just going to try and line up nicely, and then we shall hopefully wait for the family to come back home. David, how's that gap through there? Oh, let's see. Yes, I think that is a nice gap. If they do poke their heads up, I think we'll have a better view of them. But we'll just sit here patiently with them. Remember, it's now, the female's not really sitting on them too much. She'll incubate them, or try and keep them nice and warm occasionally, but it's not freezing today and it's not awfully hot, so she doesn't need to shade them either. So both her and the male will be out now foraging and trying to find something for these little ones to eat. And I can actually see one of them that's just dived down into the grass, just to do that gap. You see there's like a little yellow leaf in the branches that the elephants have chewed. She's just flown up into the tree. No, he's just flown up into the tree. And this is a great time for these magpie shrikes, in that they're going to be able to find lots and lots of insects now with all the rain that we've had. There's plenty of butterflies flying around, grasshoppers, which we've seen Steph finding when he does his bushwalks. And of course, well, there's no shortage of flies. So it shouldn't be too difficult for them to continuously keep bringing them food. Now, I'm wondering how old these chicks are. I very quickly want to check when I made a little pin mark on one of my maps as to where the nest was, and I just want to see exactly what date I did it on. Let's see. I did it. Oh, it doesn't give me. Oh, no, it does. So we found this nest originally on the 20th of October. So actually not that long ago. It feels like it was ages ago, only 10 days ago exactly. And we only discovered it about 3 or 4 days ago that, of course, these little chicks had hatched. So they're not too old now. They should start to get their little feathers coming through, developing. We can see every now and then a little bit of movement in that nest. If you're looking very carefully, the beak of one of them. And it's nice to see that all 3 are still alive. That's how many I counted. I'm not sure if anybody managed to get a screenshot, perhaps. Maybe as soon as the adults come back to the nest, perhaps you can try and take a screenshot for me, just so we can see if there were actually 3 little heads popping up. And that'll be quite nice. Hopefully all of them will survive. Like I said, there is definitely no shortage of food for these birds at the moment. So now it's just a matter of how good or how well are they able to actually catch all the little insects. But they're hard at work. I keep seeing just flashes of them occasionally, the adults flying in the distance and in and amongst the trees. They must be trying to flush something out. Now, I know that Clay was wondering this morning what is the difference between a magpie shrike and, of course, a magpie that you see in the US. Now, I've never seen a magpie for myself. I've seen a couple of pictures. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I want to try and pull up a picture very quickly of a magpie, but unfortunately I won't have one in any of my books. They're just Southern African books. But what I've done is I've opened up a picture. Now, this is an Australian magpie. We want a magpie from the US, right? Let's type that in so we get the right bird. No, we don't want maps. We want images, just so we can have a look here. Right, let's see if we can have a nice look. So have a look there. I've just pulled up my phone. So this is a magpie that you see in the States. Well, this is what Google shows me, of course. And I'm just also having a little look. They don't look very much like any of the shrikes that we get. And the first thing I want to point out is if you see the bill, can you see the beak? It doesn't have that recurved sharp point that our shrikes are notorious for having. So I wonder what the difference is. What does this magpie eat? Because it doesn't look like it's very much carnivorous. So we see these shrikes eating a variety of things, mainly insects, but of course they're well capable in taking down lizards and of course little mice as well. And then you'll need that sharp beak, of course, to tear into the flesh. Now that's the first thing I don't see. I'm going to have another look. And it doesn't really look very much like a shrike either. Its entire body looks a little bigger. It looks like a combination between, flies, between a starling and something else of which I'm not sure. So I can't really tell you too much about it, unfortunately, Clay. I apologize about that. I don't know too much at all, but maybe you could help me out and you could tell me what do they feed on. Firstly, that would be quite interesting. And of course, what type of, is it a magpie? Is it in its own family or is it closely related to something else? But I'd like to hear from you. You can please either hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you can alternatively, of course, send us a email, questions@wildearth.tv. But let's go back across to James, who's got the lions.
Now, I would love to tell you that I track these things, of course, to great personal risk to myself, but you'd all know, of course, that I'd be lying horribly. These lions are exactly where Taylor left them. They've eaten something, and I'm told it was 2 waterbucks last night. I don't know where they are, actually. I have no idea where the waterbuck are at this stage, and I don't think anyone's seen them, other than the original report which came from Aubrey. So that's the story here. Now, they've clearly eaten a huge amount, and this is very obviously a number of obvious things here. Hang on, let me just turn the game drive radio down. That is definitely Tinyo, the lion, the male lion. You can see that, oh gosh, he just turned, when he looked at us vaguely, you could see that he had that obvious tooth. Then the second thing is that lion, the little cub lying underneath the arch of that guarri bush, on its belly you can certainly see mange. Now, let me just look with my binoculars. Yeah, that is mange. And you can see it on the back of the elbows, which are where the front leg joins the trunk. Now that still, to my mind, is the only cub. No, there's a bit more. There's a bit more on the one to the right-hand side. It's a cub with a bit of mange there. That's it. But I think you're going to find that these chaps are going to survive this. Yes, they've got it. And there's another cub. In fact, the cub in front here has her ear is also covered in it. That's it, the one that's just sat up. So we do have a bit of a mange issue here with the Nkuhumas. We're going to watch it with interest. I think you'll find that they're going to be okay on account of the fact that they are eating so very much. Just quickly going to call Mike on the Game Drive channel. Mike, just come straight down Twin Dams Road. You will see the tracks going off to the south, at least towards the drainage line to the east. Between Wahlberg's Eagle's Nest and the Gallagher and the Djuma Dam. So I know this could, look, it could be quite distressing to watch, especially if the disease does progress. But I think they've had it for some time now, and I don't think it's made a huge difference to their lives. And some of them are definitely clear of it completely. I don't know if you can hear, just off to the left-hand side of where we're sitting, some very, very angry birds. Some drongos and some starlings and some rollers. And I wonder, I think that there's probably a snake up there, you know. I don't think they're alarm calling at these lions. In fact, one of the lionesses just got up to look. There she is there. She's just behind this beautiful tambuti tree. She's just got up to look. And I wonder what she isn't just checking to see what it is they're shouting at. Because, of course, this is one of the ways that animals talk to each other. It's through alarm calls. And despite the fact, it's vultures. It's vultures descending. It's vultures going over the top and going down. And I wonder if that's not maybe where they killed last night. All the lions are up and looking now. There you can see very clearly that's Tinyo, which means tooth, of the Birmingham coalition. He's easy to identify, as is the one with the hole in his face, Mfumo. Yeah, there are vultures descending in great numbers now. Look at them all coming from above there. And the lions, being the great scavengers that they are, will be watching very closely where the vultures are going. And I think we'll go and have a look too, and we'll just get Kirsty to tell Taylor that the vultures are going down somewhere, it looks like, on Quarantine. Perhaps the western fringes of Quarantine. Jeepers, look at them all going. Now, if these lions had not eaten something last night, I suspect that they would have got up and started running that way. Look at that fat lump there. He doesn't know whether he should yawn or pant. They'll move around continuously every so often during the course of the day. They'll reaffirm their social bonds, especially after they've had a night of fighting over a kill. Ooh, hang on a second. Another male coming from behind us. It's Mfumo and Amber Eyes. That's them there. And now this male, Tinyo, seemingly seeking out a consort amongst these lionesses. One of them doesn't have babies either. We'll keep an eye on Amber Eyes and the other one. There's much growling, and it is a blood-curdling sound, everyone. And apparently the same thing was happening with Taylor earlier on. I don't want to move at the moment. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cubs. Just counted the cubs. So Tinyo is now up and looking. Now, there can sometimes be a little bit of fighting over mating rights, but you know, it doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes the males just kind of accept that one is going to mate and the other one isn't. I know I can't move. They've blocked our only exit from here. And Mfumo is scraping his back legs against the ground, just sort of kind of marking his territory. VM is doing pirouettes. Amber Eyes, as per usual, seems to have absolutely no interest in mating whatsoever. Sorry everyone, I can't actually move there, so that's why you've got a fairly poor view. Anyway, there we are. Everyone is over there now. And Tinyo has moved to the back of the group. That's very interesting, I must say. I don't really know why there would be. I suppose it's probably just some kind of competition over mating rights. That's very interesting, Gail. A very fascinating question, actually, from Florida. You say, will the male be patient and just wait for the female to be ready to mate, or will he use force as well? He cannot use force. If she doesn't wish to mate with him, she just moves, and it is impossible for him to do anything about it. In fact, that is the case with just about all animals out here, bar perhaps the primates, of course, who have gripping hands, and they're able to then kind of manhandle, if you like, each other. It doesn't happen like that with any of the other animals, because the female has to want to mate. If the male wants to mate with her, she's got to be willing. She can just move away. Yes, the refusal to mate, I suppose, can result in some kind of conflict where he might get a little bit aggressive, but you see, he can't actually hold her down. So and she's also, a lioness is pretty intimidating when she's angry, and so I don't think it happens. I think you'll find that unless the female is fully prepared to mate, no, the male is unable to have his way, as it were. And that's why these males just lie around, infinitely patient, waiting. These chaps ate a very, very large meal, and just before we left them last night, we were wondering if they'd try and kill last night. Well, indeed they did. And we're led to believe it was 2 waterbuck. And of course, when we talk about predators, the greatest predator out here is the human predator, and the human predators caused a great deal of trouble and strife for the rhino of the area. And Rick, you're wondering if the lions do the same sort of thing. No, they don't. Rhino are too big. Rhino are simply too big for lions to worry about. So no, they don't go for rhino out here. Yes, there's the odd occasion where a lion might, I suppose, in desperation try and take a young rhino, and if a rhino was orphaned, certainly it could easily be killed by lions. But no, you'll find that by and large, lions leave the rhino, especially in this area, completely alone. Bull rhinos, 2.5 tons, that's 6,000 pounds. I mean, that's a massive, massive animal. And these chaps, less than 1/10 of that size. Hello, Shannon. You're in Ohio, and you're just sort of following on the topic of the lions and the rhino. You say if a rhino was to die of natural causes and being eaten by lions, would we show it? Yes, I think we would show it, absolutely. I think that would it would be silly not to. We're not trying to hide anything here. All we're trying to do is to, if there's the slightest chance that a poacher might see where a rhino is, well, we don't want to be involved in anything like that. But if the rhino's dead already, then there would be absolutely no harm in us showing it, I don't believe. Good question there. Oh, the lion's very tired today after their fat meal. I think we'll sit here for a little bit longer, and then we'll head across and see if we can't find what those vultures were descending towards. And like I say, if these chaps hadn't eaten, you'd find that they would have headed off and tried to follow where those vultures were going. Gregory, a very good question. You say you obviously saw watching those, or you were watching those vultures fly from a huge distance away, and you say, how did they spot the kill? Well, Gregory, it's no more complicated than them having very, very good eyes. They're able to spot things from a huge distance away, and those vultures would have seen something dead on the ground from a long way away. The bush isn't too thick yet, and that's because we haven't had much growth, much rain yet, and so the vultures can see things from a huge distance away. And then what they do is one will find a carcass, and the others tend to follow that one. So one will find it, and then others that are closer by will follow it, and then those that are even further away will come and follow the vultures as well. And they all go down, and then they'll have a feed. And that's why the lions and leopards and all the other predators are very, very aware of where it is that vultures are when they fly over. I'm trying to put a positive spin on this mange thing, but I am worried about these lions, I must say. I would hate to see them all succumb to mange, but it is a natural, completely natural disease, and so we must just watch and see what happens and learn. There's the big fellow up. Every time he moves, there's a growl from behind us. They are quite nervous of each other, obviously. And there's always a balance, it's quite interesting. There's a balance between the violence that they're prepared to, the violence they're prepared to act on, and the need to try and maintain social cohesion within the coalition and within the pride. Now, Clay, you're wondering about if they're ever dangerous to us. With cubs like this, you always want to be a little bit careful, especially if you're tracking them on foot. And yes, they can give you a bit of a rev and get up and charge you. And if you're not used to lions, well, you might turn around and run away, and that could easily result in there being danger, because that is what a lion's prey does. If you stand still, generally you're okay. So you don't want to threaten lions with cubs, you don't want to threaten any lion, but a lion with cubs especially, you don't want to threaten. Then they can become dangerous. But right now, no, they're pretty relaxed, bar the two males who are clearly quite irritated with each other for whatever reason that is. And normally, of course, as with men, they're fighting over girls. But what I think you'll find here is that the rest are completely relaxed. A lovely breeze blowing through here now. Red-chested cuckoo in the background, the sun coming out. Oh, it's gorgeous. Very nice to have animals to film, really, VM, isn't it? Rather than just my waffling face. VM is now being completely silent because he's agreeing. Oh, now maybe is that the female that's in estrus? This could result in a bit of conflict here. Yeah. And there's now a deep throaty growl from behind us, which of course is slightly terrifying. Every time that female who could be in estrus moves, he gets up. That results in growling. And her disposition is not exactly one of great welcome to him. He's kind of lying there, swagger breathing. It looks like he's sort of breathing with a swagger, as if to say, well, look how amazing I am. And she's got her ears pinned back, her face turned away, thinking, you're a stinky, stinky creature and I want nothing to do with you. Hello, Duck Rat Dave. We were chatting about mange a little bit earlier, and you're wondering if the mange does progress any further in these lions. Are we going to show them less? No, I don't believe we will at all. The reason we showed the sticks less, Duck Rat, what is it? Duck Rat Dave, is it? Is simply because they are not always in our traversing area. They've spent a lot of time on Chitwa and Little Gowrie and Mala Mala, which are areas we can't traverse. And so, yes, while we did see them looking mangy and pretty foul, we didn't have a huge amount of time with them. These cubs, we would certainly show. I mean, whatever happens, nothing will be hidden from you, and if we are able to show them their triumphs and tragedies with the mange, we'll absolutely do that. It is going to be interesting to see, because it's a little bit like, well, you know how, I don't know how many of you have watched that film or that amazing series Game of Thrones, or perhaps read the books, but there's a disease they describe in it called grey scale, where it's a kind of insidious movement of, it starts as a skin disease and eventually it kills the victim. And this mange is a little bit like that, where it starts in a little patch, and it takes a very long time to progress, but it does seem kind of inexorable, almost like there's nothing you can do about it. And it'll be interesting to see what happens here. That's certainly what happened with the sticks. It just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And of course, all these lions are lying in extremely close proximity all the time. And that's why I think they're going to be okay. Because I think that far more of them would have caught it by now if they were going to. Anyway, time will tell. Now, today, or this year, has been possibly one of the absolutely worst mosquito years I've experienced in my years in the Lowveld. And Fredes, you're wondering if the lions managed to escape the mosquitoes. They do to a certain extent, but they do get bitten, and many animals out here get bitten. Remember that human beings haven't really lived out here for a very long time in great numbers, which meant that the mosquitoes would almost certainly have had to drink the blood of other mammals other than human beings only. So yes, they can certainly get it at lions, and they can almost certainly get at all of the antelope if they want to, and so I'm pretty sure that they don't get protected from mosquitoes, but much like us in this area, through our natural kind of resilience to them. I've never seen so many mosquitoes as I have this year, and I know Taylor was talking about flies and the number of flies there are. Well, of course, mosquitoes are from the same order, and I wonder if it isn't just a year of the fly. Certainly it is a little bit worrying out here, given that there is sometimes malaria, but we've had very little rain, so we might be okay. Alrighty, let's just go and find out what Taylor's doing. I'm going to sit here for a little bit longer while there's a little bit of action with the cubs, and then we'll go and check out what was happening with those vultures.
On our way sort of towards quarantine, we managed to stumble across this giraffe that was just lurking in the background, standing very still. I think he was hoping that he wasn't going to be seen today, because he seems to be walking further and further away into the bushes. Come on, giraffe, show yourself. If he doesn't come out into the open and he does go further away, then we're not too far now. We're just approaching the Duma Dam, and then we'll go and have a little look on quarantine, because I can see quite a few vultures in the distance, and they seem to be flying quite low, so I definitely think that needs some investigation. We'll have to drive around and do a lap. Okay, it doesn't look like he's going to come out. Let's not waste too much time here. Mr. Giraffe, you better have your A game for this afternoon. Sometime he has to have a bit of a talking to. Oh, I've just lost my mic. And pulls my hair. You can live on my lap for now. Okay, well, we'll have a quick look at the dam as well and have a look and see if there's anybody else around, and then we will not be too far away from quarantine. Now, I wonder what's happening around there, because we haven't really been seeing too much vulture activity down this end of the world. It seemed to have been that all the vultures at one point were living between Drakensberg Road and Mumba Road with those 2 buffalo carcasses that we saw a couple of days ago. We're just going through a little dip now. Now, it's unusual that the vultures are flying so low. And typically we see them at this time of the day trying to catch thermals, and there were a few that were trying to find a gap in all the clouds and catch one of those thermals and ride up to a couple of 1,000 feet into the sky. But then, like I said, I saw a couple of others that were flying sort of just over the tops of the trees. So we need to go and have a little investigation, I think. So we're making our way around. Perhaps on our way past we'll say hello to the crested barbet and see if the crested barbets are home. Got to visit all our nests. And something that I would also like to see, and I need to remember to tell Steph exactly where it was that hornbill nest, that red-billed hornbill nest. We saw the 2, the male and female, we saw them sort of starting to plug it up. That's something we need to try and go back to visit, but I think it would be easier to actually have a look when you're on foot, so you can get around to the other side of the tree and see what's happening. Right, we're not far now. I may even see James as we go past. We're over a little bump. Right, here's the marula tree in which the crested barbet nest is in. You see that little hole in the distance? I'm just going to duck here so you can have a look. Now, so that branch that goes to the left, here we go, go in, go a little bit to the left. There it is, there's the hole there. Now, it doesn't look like anybody's home just yet. But you can see how windy it is, all those marula leaves flapping in the wind. Now, I'm also not even sure when this, I remember finding it a few weeks ago, so I wonder if these chicks also couldn't be getting to the point now where they're going to fledge soon, because it's been quite some time. We've seen only a couple of times an adult going in or out, but I don't hear even any of the crested barbets in the area. Perhaps they're not home. Perhaps this is not even active anymore. Well, we'll keep checking on it. Let's go to quarantine, which is just over the dam wall, and go and see what is going on. Something smelled very much like leopard urine. You can get that whiff of popcorn out in the bush, but I haven't seen any footprints just yet. And another animal that also urinates and sort of has that very buttered popcorn smell is jennets. Jennets also do that, so it's just the 2 leopards and jennets. I was under the impression for quite a long time that it was just leopard, and then I actually watched a jennet sort of urinate, and well, then I drove past it and it smelled very much like leopard dung and leopard urine, and of course there were no leopard footprints, and we watched it do it. So that is how I figured out that jennets have that smell to them too. Right, going through here. Okay, I'm not too far away from quarantine now, but let's go back across to James and see if there's still tension with Nkuhumas.
The tension's been broken by the disappearance of the entire pride. They've moved down through the drainage, and we're just trying to see if they're going to cross over. I wonder if they're not heading back to where the carcass is. I think have they crossed out there, Fiam? That's very interesting. Okay, let's see if we can't get into the drainage, but I think we might have to go all the way around. That over there. There's much stick in this area. Hold on, everybody. Watch the back of your heads. think we're actually going to have to make our way out of here. Now, these two, there's one cub left of these two with this consorting pair, which I think is quite strange. Yeah, they've definitely gone out, haven't they? Yeah. I'm sure they would have gone back towards the kill site. I can't see why else they would have moved. So let's go and see if we can't find the kill. Now you might lose pictures as we go through here, everyone. We will have to flap the aerial down. How's that, Wimpy? Alright, I think while we do this, let's head across to Taylor, see if she's had any luck with those vultures, and we'll see if we can find the lions.
So I've seen a couple of vultures going down, but I said to you this morning I wanted to show you all the lion tracks. Can you see that? I think if we maybe zoom out a little bit, we'll see all of them. Now, it was so funny as we were coming across here this very early this morning, as we just saw all the different sizes of different lion tracks, and it was so beautiful. You can see on both sides of those tracks over there. But the wind is slowly starting to blow the dust in and across, making them look nice and all. Now, I just want to turn this game drive radio off again. But I just seen some vultures land down just up ahead, almost like where we do the fireside chats. Let's see what is going on up here. I'm just going to go up onto this middle road. Try and get another sight of them. They were somewhere along here. Just saw them landing. Now, I wonder if something hasn't died up here. There we go. I can see them all. Let's have a quick look at them. They're all over there. Look at all those vultures. Now, I can't see what they're eating, but they have definitely landed, and they're feeding on something you can see on the right. But it looks as though maybe this is the waterbuck kill that everyone was talking about this morning, that apparently the lions had killed. It does actually look very much like a waterbuck, and that would make sense. Like I said, I didn't think that a waterbuck would be very much of a big meal for all of those lions, so perhaps they just devoured it, and then of course in just a couple of hours, and then left it, and that's what the vultures are feeding on. Let's see if we can get a better view. I'm going to go up and around the corner. So this makes sense. This is obviously where the lions killed last night. Like I said, I couldn't see any footprints at all. Not footprints, my goodness, my brain is not working today. I couldn't see any carcass while I was down in that drainage, and we did quite a bit of navigating around here. This is a much better view. There's quite a few vultures here. Now, we're quite far away from them, but it only seems to be the white-backed vultures that are here. You can see some of them are even sitting down having a rest, and of course still squabbling about the carcass. There's another one making his move, going in there. Yeah, you can see not anything left on this carcass at all, just a few scraps. And there's what looks like it could be the face of the animal. It does look very much, like I said, waterbuck-like. It looks like there's grey hair. And typically there's lots of waterbuck that hang around on quarantine, from beautiful big males to, of course, females and their little ones as well. You can see all the flies hanging around too. Now, this is when carcasses are devoured quite quickly, is when a lion or a leopard or a hyena or something has started scavenging on it or feeding on it first and torn it right open. Then the carcass really doesn't stand a chance. You can see all the vultures look very much well fed. You're probably wondering, how did we miss this carcass on quarantine? But quarantine it's not flat. It's sort of got a slight gradient to it, and where these vultures are all sitting, you don't see it until you come and drive right up onto the top on the middle road. That's why we missed it. And I don't think those vultures were coming down when we started drive. I think they've only just started coming in when James pointed it out. And I thought, well, we better race over there and have a look. We did hear the lions calling I heard them quite a few times last night. But I didn't hear anybody giving a distress call, so I presume that this waterbuck must have died quite quickly then. But I can't tell you yet if it's a male or female waterbuck with all those vultures surrounding it. Oh, there's lots of them here though. And it's not often that we get to see vultures sort of sitting down the way they are on the left. See how they've got their sort of wings open and they're sitting down on their chest? I suppose this is almost how they would sit if they were sitting on a nest. Isn't that lovely? I don't think you don't often see that. It looks as though a couple of them have got quite a bit more sort of white feathers on them than the others. Perhaps these are juveniles. It does take them a number of years before they get their adult plumage. So I think these lighter coloured birds, and I'm not talking about the white patch on the middle of their back because that's where the vultures get their name from, the white-backed vultures. But if you sort of see on their wings, they're sort of more of a mottled, a tawny colour, almost like the paled morph Wahlberg's eagles. That's sort of the colour that they have to them. So I think that some of these are still juveniles. And a couple of them have still got all the white feathers on the backs of their heads as well, like the one on the left, which is normally an indication of a juvenile too. As they get older, they lose that sort of white fluff and it becomes dark brown. But very little feathers on their neck. I love that adaptation that they have to the other birds, that they're able to utilize their neck and stick it right into the carcass. And then, of course, they're not covered in blood. All the others are having a bit of a squabble now. Not fighting over it like we saw them fighting over the buffalo carcass the other day. I think that they've unfortunately eaten most of it. Right, let's very quickly go across to James, who's got drinking lions.
Well, they're certainly thinking about drinking, everybody. We've come across the other side, and this is one of those natural pans that forms when the rain starts to come. Lots of clay here. Well, here comes the male and the female. They're talking to each other. Ooh. Ooh. Look at her very slinkily there, draping her tail over his neck, just to keep him interested. She's still not ready to mate. Let's see if they come down and have a bit of a drink here. It's a very picturesque little spot, as VM says. Postcard picturesque. You know, Douglas in Arizona, you've made a very good observation, and you say, is it possible that the Birminghams are breaking into two coalitions, given that we only kind of see these ones with the Nkuhumas? Douglas, look, I think it would be premature to say they're breaking into two coalitions, but what is not uncommon is for a large coalition like this to semi-split, and one half take care of one side of the sort of territory and the other half take care of the other side. So yes, that is not unusual, and it does happen quite a lot, and it certainly happened with the Majingalan coalition, who were the dominant force in this area for a very long time and still are on the western Sabi Sand. But when trouble arises, if a coalition wants to stay in charge, then they need to sort of rally. And certainly that's what the Majingalan lions do. When there's trouble, they roar, they all come together and they look after what happens together. Now that could well be the case here, or they could go the way that the Matimbas went. There were 4 Matimbas originally, and of those 4 Matimbas, 2 of them stayed here, 2 went north, and they just never kind of joined up again. And so when the Birmingham boys came into this area, of course, those Matimbas had absolutely no way of defending themselves against 5 lions. But yes, we certainly could see we could be seeing the beginnings of that sort of stratification, if you like, of their roles in the territory. There's much growling and much tension on account of the male's attentions here. I'm sure he's the one that's created all of the conflict that there is. Well, we have 8 cubs here, and Christine, you say it seems optimistic to think that all of them will make it to adulthood. And is this a typical pride size? Well, the pride size is not atypical for this area. 5 lionesses is pretty standard issue for the Kruger region. 8 cubs making it to adulthood. I think it's highly unlikely that they'll all make it to adulthood. I'm not sure how long they'll all last. Only probably 1 in 10 males makes it to adulthood. There's a big dog fight going on. There's a battalier chasing what looks to be a Wahlberg's eagle. Look at this. Well spotted, VM. Oh, they've turned over. The battalier was put to flight there by the pale form Wahlbergs. I'll just keep watching them. Oh, they've turned away from us, I'm afraid. Anyway, that's quite interesting. Where was I? Yes, so only 1 in 10 of the males will probably make it to the stage that these Birmingham chaps are. The females, probably a lot greater success, probably 5 in 10 or so. So I would say, yeah, 50% of these females probably won't make it to adulthood. But an additional 4 females, or how many females are there? There are 5 of them here. Let's say 3 of them will make it. So an additional 3 to this pride will make a big difference to its numbers. There's also something quite special. Isn't that lovely? That, everybody, if I'm not mistaken, is a wood sandpiper. Let me just quickly look it up. I haven't seen one since last year, or since last season, so I'm a little bit, what should we say, rusty. Byron says I'm correct. That means Byron is in the final control. Well, that's very nice. Byron is doing extra work. The wood sandpiper, it is indeed, everybody. We don't often get views like that of the wood sandpiper. I might have to take a rank average photograph of him. Isn't that exciting? Don't you think the world will be a better place for my picture of the wood sandpiper? Maybe. Liam is unconvinced. He says maybe. I still can't actually find the wood sandpiper with my camera lens. Okay, while I try and find this wood sandpiper with my camera, let's head across and find out how the vultures are doing with Taylor and their waterbuck carcass.
And the story of the Nkuhumas and what they ate last night, we're slowly starting to figure it out. Now, it looks as though they must have killed an adult waterbuck and her calf. We can see some ribs over here. I think this is the calf. It doesn't look particularly large. And then there's a carcass in the distance where most of the vultures are sort of around. And that looks like the ribs are much larger there. So I suspect that must have been the mother of the little calf as well. So they had a good feed, those lions. I mean, a waterbuck is quite large, probably about 250, maybe 300 kilograms. They're quite big. Now, very, very briefly as well, as we repositioned, we come around onto one of the other roads, we had a glimpse of a lappet-faced vulture. Now, if you're wondering what a lappet-faced vulture is, I suppose I can show you a photo. I managed to snap one very quickly before it flew away. And I don't know why lappet-faced vultures seem to be so shy. They never seem to stick around unless you give them lots of room. Let's zoom. much more robust than, of course, the white-backed vultures, and much larger. So this beautiful leopard-faced vulture that only stuck around for a couple of moments can weigh almost 6.5 kilograms and has an outstanding wingspan. Oh, sorry, my camera decided to turn off, but I think you got the picture. Sorry about that. I'm sure Kirsty was in flat panic thinking that she'd lost signal with that, but don't worry. And of course, they've got a massive wingspan that almost reaches 3 meters long. But let's have a little look again at these. Oh, they've started to peck at the carcass closest to us once again. Now, of course, the white-backed vultures, I'm afraid, are not as impressive and as large as the leopard-faced vultures, but at least we get to see them in big numbers. It's only occasionally you see 1 or 2 leopard-faced vultures around a carcass. It's not usually more than that. And these beautiful birds are not much smaller. They've got a wingspan of about 2.2 meters, so it's quite large, but then they're much lighter. They only weigh about 5 kilograms or so not as heavy. And I wish you could see, though, how the wings of a leopard-faced vulture dwarfs the white-backed. Now, speaking about their size, and I was also chatting about watching these birds and the way that they were sitting, and I was comparing it to how they would possibly sit on a nest. And I know that David from Napa would like to know, how large are a vulture's nests? Well, because of the size of the bird, they need to be quite big. They normally build them on the tops of trees, and then with lots and lots of sticks and branches. They can be massive, probably about 1 meter, I would say. Somewhere around there. I mean, a leopard-faced vulture stands at just over 1 meter tall, so they'd have to be massive nests. And ones that they'd constantly reuse, very much like the fish eagles and sort of what we see with the eagles in general, how they reuse nests and just rebuild them every year. So it'd be massive. Sort of, if you can stick your arms as wide as they can go, I would say about that long, roughly by about that wide. They make platform nests. That's the proper term to describe a vulture's nest, and most of the eagles' nests. So typically either in the fork of a tree if it's got a wide enough trunk, otherwise on the tops of the trees, on some sturdy branches. And I reckon once they've finished eating whatever's left on this carcass, I don't think there's very much. I think the lions did a very good job at picking the waterbuck clean, as it's not really a big meal for all those lions. As I reckon they probably sit here for a little bit, maybe perch themselves up in a couple of marulas, let food digest before they set off and catch their thermals. But I'm sure the vultures are very happy that they didn't even need to fly very high this morning. They were able to have breakfast. But it's really nice. And this is one of the things that I absolutely love about this time of the year, and when we do have the drier periods. As sad as what it is for the herbivores, and we know that they sort of are stressed the most, not having any food, not too much water around. But of course we get to see these amazing gatherings of these large birds, the vultures. You're seeing, hopefully you're going to start to see the hyenas coming through as well, but I think there's just so many carcasses around at the moment that the hyenas are sort of all out and about. And this is lovely. Now, a vulture that I'd like to see very briefly, and hopefully one decides to come around here, is a white-headed vulture. Looks quite similar to the leopard-faced, just slightly different, of course, with the white head. So like that fluffy white hair that we see on the hooded vultures, on the white-backed vultures, they have a similar thing. Now, Paul, you're wondering if anything eats a vulture. I can imagine if a vulture were to die, something like a jackal would scavenge it. We often see jackals being quite brave, or attempting to be brave and chasing the vultures. I've seen lions. I haven't seen it personally, but I've seen footage of lions taking down vultures before that have just got too close and then feeding on them. So that's an opportunity. Those were young lions, though. I think I've actually told that story before. So let's... Kirsty says she may have thought she had seen the leopard-faced vulture. Ah, Kirsty, you have got incredible ears. Not incredible ears, incredible eyes. Your ears aren't bad either, though. But there's the leopard-faced vulture. hiding in the far back. My goodness. So it must have just got up and moved around, because we actually saw it fly away, but maybe it did a big loop and then sneakily landed. Well spotted. So there we go. Now let's see if this lappet-faced is going to take off, because that is quite spectacular. Look at it run. Look at that wing. Look at those wings, how massive they are. Huge. Are you going to land in the tree? That is beautiful. Almost 3 meters across from one wing to the other. And off it goes. See, I told you they're quite shy. It was happily sitting there unnoticed, and it's almost like it got the camera onto its... Look at all these. They're all taking off now. They must be sort of taking the cue. And now they're... Sorry, I believe that I'm disappearing every now and then. Is that better, Kirst? Wonderful. No, it's amazing. I'm not sure why they're leaving, because there's still food for them to scavenge on. But everybody's flying around now and leaving. Perhaps they got a bit nervous and not too sure as to why that vulture flew off. Oh my goodness. Well, the wind is really starting to howl now. I'm going to stick with these vultures for just a little longer, but let's go back across to James and see if the lions are not thirsty anymore.
The wind sure ain't howling here. It's completely sheltered where we are, and the cloud has been sort of dissipated by the blazing summer sun. Anyway, so we're sitting here in the sun. The lions are getting a little bit sort of sweaty and panty, and some of them have headed down into the drainage to the other side there, and I think that is where they're going to spend the majority of this day. Now, I'm very pleased to say that this is one of the only times, actually I've seen it, I've read about it many times, of course, that the lions have put paid to any legend that they don't eat waterbuck because they don't taste nice. Well, they certainly killed 2 waterbuck last night, ate most of them, left the scraps for the vultures, and now they're lying in the shade here while the waterbuck, they're lying in waterbuck heaven, I suppose. They've moved, where are we? We're probably about 100 meters to the south, 300 feet to the south of where we first saw these lions. And I think they'll probably move between the shade and the water for the rest of the day. And we may be lucky enough to find them here again this afternoon. But again, I think very interesting that they left that carcass. Obviously, they'd eaten most of it, most of both of them. But they hadn't lain there, like they do most of the time. They will lie around the carcass until it's done, and then they move and they leave it alone. And I think it's because, again, they've eaten so much, they just think, we'll go and have a drink, lie in the shade, and if we want to eat again, we'll just kill something else. They've eaten so much in the last few months. Just getting up and having a bit of a stretch, moving into some cooler shade. And Vim and I were just saying, look, there's quite a lot of mange spotting on just about all the cubs. So, we'll see what happens. If this is an inexorable disease like the grey scale, or if they will recover from it. I think you're going to find they're fine. Find that they are fine. Joel in New York, I'm not really sure about the answer to this. We obviously focused quite a lot today on disease, and you want to know about the Zika virus and whether it's possible that lions or other animals could get it. I don't know of its origins, Joel. I'm assuming that it probably came from animals originally, and I don't know if it necessarily affected them, because of course we do get viruses that will affect human beings, but their carriers, animal carriers, are not affected by them. And I'm not sure if the Zika virus is one of those. It's quite interesting, actually. It's transferred by mosquitoes, isn't it? And so I don't know if that would affect lions. It certainly hasn't come to Africa yet. I don't think there have been any recorded cases here. Certainly the number of mosquitoes in this area at this time of the year would make it quite terrifying were it to be around. Now, a disease I do know about them getting, Sarah in Florida, you weren't worried about rabies and whether or not they can get rabies. Yes, they can. Absolutely. Can you imagine the terror of a male lion filled with rabies? It doesn't tend to make them much more aggressive, apparently, but they do foam at the mouth like a dog does. But yes, they can get rabies. Rabies is a constant threat out here, and we're very vigilant of it, and that of course is because of the proximity of the reserve to rural communities where there are absolutely no veterinary facilities, which means many of the dogs go through their lives without any kind of inoculation. And so if a rabies outbreak does occur, it's always possible that those dogs could bring that disease into the reserves, as happened with Sindile. And for those of you who don't know who Sindile is, he's now just over 2 years old, young male leopard, and he caught a rabid dog, which he dragged into a tree, and we managed to chase him away before he could eat it. But he was inoculated before he showed signs, and if you can do that, both with humans and actually with animals, then you can prevent the disease spreading. And he's now okay. But yes, it is a constant worry, and certainly as a human being, you don't want to have anything like, you don't want to go anywhere near rabies. I think there's one recorded human being surviving from rabies in America, and I think they kind of almost cryogenically froze her, and I'm not sure that I don't think that she was ever kind of mentally okay after they did manage to get rid of the disease. It gets into your brain, and then you really are in quite a lot of trouble. Anyway, I think we're going to leave these chaps now. Let's head out. We've got a few minutes left, see if there are one or two more things to see. If we don't see anything, well, then I will see you probably either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. I'm not sure exactly. In the meantime, let's go for the last few minutes with Taylor and those vultures at quarantine. Thanks for coming along our drive. I'm very glad the end turned out slightly more action-packed than the beginning. See you later.
Have a look at all these vultures now. They're really the few that have decided to stay behind to finish up the last of the carcass. They're all getting into squabbles. Obviously, the adult waterbuck must be almost completely finished, because it seems as though they keep moving from the top and then down towards us again to pick at a couple of scraps. Now, we saw the lappet-faced vulture here, and the lappet-faced vultures was quite lucky. And sometimes they're not directly in competition for what the other vultures are feeding on. Because they're much larger, they're able to digest certain things better than the other vultures, for instance, like tendons and even the skin of the animals, which most of the vultures aren't able to do. You can see these vultures, they're pecking at the skin, but they're not eating it. They're trying to remove the bits of flesh that are still attached to the inside of the skin there. But this is just absolutely incredible. Nothing goes to waste, even a couple of starlings coming in. Now, Pinchy says that she's always amazed as to how something living can die so quickly and then of course be reduced to absolute nothing. It is quite amazing. Like I said, nothing is wasted out here. They've picked that carcass clean. And a moment ago, and we can see the starling starting to move in, with all the hair that's left over from the waterbuck, you can see that starling had something in its mouth. I suspect that a lot of these little birds, the starlings being included, coming through and to collect as much of that hair as they can, which they will use for nesting material. So not even the hair of an animal goes to waste, which I think is quite spectacular. Is that all right? Sorry, I believe that I'm having some gremlins attacking my mic pack. It has been such a wonderful morning. I don't know about anybody else, but I feel as though this drive has gone so quickly. One moment we were with the lions and Henry the hippo, and then the next moment we were looking at the magpie shrike nest and a buffalo, and then after that, well, we heard the vultures, and it feels as though like I could still go for a bit longer. Where on earth has the time flown by today? It's just been one of those days. I suppose we also haven't been baking in the heat for which has been a first for a few days, so that's quite pleasant too. Looks like a couple more vultures wanting to perhaps leave the graveyard that we have over here at the moment. And not making as much noise as you normally hear around a carcass. But like I said, I don't think there's very much left to hear too much squabbling. Now, I really wish some of those starlings or little sparrows or whatever it may be would come around and collect some more of that hair. It was so interesting to see all the different birds utilizing the various materials. Which roller is that? Can you see it? Oh my goodness, I can hear a roller. Sorry, I got distracted. It's sat into that marula now. Now, I'm not sure if it was perhaps a broad-billed roller. It looked very dark, but it's now sitting out of sight, but we'll keep an eye out for it. Perhaps it decides to come through. Maybe we'll catch it, but I don't think we will, sadly, but we'll follow up around here. But unfortunately, we're coming right to an end, but I hope you've enjoyed this fantastic sunrise safari with us, and I hope you're going to join in again this afternoon. And it's been an absolute pleasure once again, and I hope you have a lovely day. So from myself and David, we shall see you this afternoon.